you know,
Bless you.
See?
thank you.
Watch
Oh,
next. You're gonna see.
But yeah. So they can you can see as in the sense that okay, so obviously Isaiah did prophesy about the destruction of Babylon, these places, and it did happen, but it wasn't in the scope that Isaiah prophesied because Isaiah truly prophesied of a, you know, 2050 prophecy, or whatever year the future holds.
what do they think about the New Testament writers using the Old Testament and saying these are those days?
Like the one guy that I debated, he says because it's plural, right? Last days or these days, he takes the the how do you say it? The day is 1,000 years is the
Oh,
whatever I forget. Not the quote, but it's pretty much saying that if you look back in time, we can see that the world is almost 6,000 years old. So they take the like when we hit 6,000 years, that's the millennial period. So he says that, he mentions that in the Hebrew calendar, they're at like 57, 70 something in their calendar. So they're like almost like 200, 200 and,
I think
25
it's
years.
57, 78.
Yeah, something like that. So, they're almost to the 6,000 year, but he had said that there was a miscalculation for over 200 plus years, so nobody knows exactly, but we're almost at the 6,000 year. But what's interesting is so actually forget the interesting part, but so they would say that right when we hit the 6,000, because God teaches from the beginning, the end. There's a scripture that talks about Isaiah. It talks about that somewhere Isaiah 40 or something like that, and so they say, okay, if you look at Genesis chapter 1, you have 7 days creation, 6 days God works. So they'll be like, oh, well, why did God need to take 6 days? Why didn't he just like snap his finger and get it done? And it's because they would say it's teaching a deeper meaning that the world is going to last 6 days. And then they would say 6,000 years. And on the seventh day is the millennial, 1,000 year reign of Yeshua on the earth. Then you have the eighth and great day, which is the new creation. So they believe that when you bring it back to these last days, they would say when Paul or Peter said those things, they were living in the what was it like the fourth day. So you had like the
see.
fifth and
Okay, so
sixth
they're
day.
living at the end of the week, is what they're trying to say.
Yeah, so you have 2 more days to be fulfilled. So you could theoretically say we're in the last days because we're in the last 2 days leading up to the seventh day.
Well,
But
wasn't Isaiah in the last part of the week as well? Because it was less than 1,000 years from the two of between James and Amos.
well, I mean, I guess when you look at Isaiah and it mentions, I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot of the times when we look at the Old Testament, it does mention the day of the Lord or these days and things like that. But it had like
I mean, from Amos to James is what, an afternoon?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. When did Amos write?
Amos chapter 9 talks about the restoration, and then James mentions it
No,
in.
no, no, no. What year did Amos?
Um, that's a good question. Somewhere around before,
The Babylonian, or is that after?
before I think, because he talks about the judgments of all the nations.
I'm gonna just Google it really quick.
I think 9/11 is the part where he actually starts the restoration, talking about David's restoration.
They say about 780 to 747 BC. So yeah, this is
Oh my
before the
God.
northern house of Israel was taken, because they were taken at like 726 or something. So that's before. The northern house of Israel was taken by a
Yeah, there were
sword.
multiple deportations. At least what, 2 or 3?
Well, there was 3 deportations
Yeah, 3.
in Babylon, but you had like 150 years before that, where you had, or a little bit less than 150 years, like 720 or 730 BC, you have the 10 northern tribes being taken into Assyria. Then
Right.
you have in like 606, you have then, when Nebuchadnezzar took in power, he took, there was 3 deportations of the Jews, the southern tribes, into Babylon, which spreaded for about like a 20-year period. This is where like Daniel was taken captive. He was taken
And he
captive
wasn't the
in the
first.
beginning. He was the first, I guess, deportation to Babylon. But yeah, I mean, and then when they did mention this stuff about this calendar, I feel like the calendar thing for them was like a big, like, I mean, they made so many points of, to address and everything like that. But my only 2 cents that I gave was, that they're following, that a lot of people in the Hebrew roots, they like look to Judaism and they try to get their ways and stuff like that. So I had mentioned to them about, like, me and my own personal studies, studying the Hebrew calendar, that the Jews, you know, started following a Babylonian calendar
Mm-hmm.
when they were in Babylon, and I started
Because
talking to them.
the moon is
Has
the main deity, not the sun.
Yeah, they focus on the moon to render their months. And so I was, because what was interesting was the guy had mentioned in his sermon that he was like teaching us or talking about, that's everything is future. He had mentioned the calendar is 360 days. So I had asked him, I said, how do you get 360 days in your calendar if you follow this moon? And they couldn't really answer, but that there's another guy in the group that's like all into Enoch and stuff like that, about the difference and the calendars and stuff like that. And I was just like, well, you don't even need to go to Enoch. And I had mentioned to them about the flood, that if you look at the flood account, it's a total of 150 days and it's a perfect 5 month period. So within 5 months, you have 150 days, which equals 30-day months. So there's no possible way to get that on any Jewish Hebrew roots calendar, that follows the moon as the months. So I was just trying to show them that their main foundation on this calendar is faulty, because they're following some Babylonian Jewish, pagan calendar in a
They
sense.
have to do a 13th month every now and then because
Yes,
all,
exactly.
and so
Uh
God
huh.
apparently makes mistakes.
But no, the thing is I was telling them, I said, if you look at the scriptures, there's places that talk about, in the book of Kings, it talks about, I forget which king sets up uh, judges or like rulers or something, for each month, and it names literally 12 people.
Right, but
There's
if they're
no
going
13th person.
by this Jewish month system where they have to have a 13th month and they say this is of God, then you have to say, well, God then makes
No,
mistakes.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think that some people might say that the calendar was shifted after the flood, because they would say that there was some catastrophic event that might have, kind of taken the moon off the sun cycle in a sense. But the problem with that is, you have it during the flood. It's a perfect 5 month period. So, and then you look at the book of Revelation, and it talks about this 3.5 years, 42 months, 1260 day period. Well, if you do the math, that's 30 days per month for
Mm-hmm.
42 months, which is a perfect 3.5 years, which only works on a calendar with 360 days. So my main focus was kind of like hitting them at their calendar, then bringing in the Greek Septuagint to show them that the Greek Septuagint actually doesn't swap the Hebrew, because in the Hebrew Masoretic you have the word month and moon being synonymous for one another and interchangeable in some circumstances in the scriptures, but within the Hebrew Masoretic. But if you look at the Greek Septuagint, that never happens. It's
Right. Now, so
always
the Hebrew word for month and moon, does it have the same consonants?
no. In Hebrew, the word for moon is yarek, and the Hebrew word for month is chodesh. They're completely different words.
Different consonants? So
Yeah,
points would make it.
completely. Yeah,
Okay.
they're way off. You know, definitely different words completely. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is in the Septuagint never does that. So I was trying to show them that, well, if you look at the Septuagint, you have a stronger foundation on this calendar stuff. So in a sense, I'm trying to get them to think, okay, well, maybe this calendar stuff is wrong, and the Septuagint is a better translation. And once they accept that, then you go to Genesis chapter 11 and you go, well, look at the dates. And if you want to, hold up to this pedestal of this 6,000 day creation, we're almost in the 6,000 year. Well, according to the Greek Septuagint, we're we're in probably 6,700. So the millennial period started 700 years ago, according to your theory. So then, if they accepted that, then they would have to throw that in the trash can.
Mhm.
So trying to knock the statue down at I see as the foundation, which is this 6,000th day or the seventh day creation thing,
Well, you
because the
just have to show
scriptures
them.
never talk about that.
You just have to show them Nathan H83's video about
Yeah, of course.
the flood being placed in the wrong, like everybody going off of Egyptian chronology here. Okay.
hmm Yeah, so I mean, that's something that I would definitely bring up for sure. If if this Wednesday if we talk about it again, I mean, that's just what I'm gonna probably focus on. If
Mhm.
we're gonna talk about why this isn't true or whatever. I mean, I've told them
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
love to go through
I'm with you, man.
Matthew.
Like a lot of people, they like to take that verse out of context. Like, first off, right, a day with God is as 1,000 years, or 1,000 years as is with a day with God. To me, that's a simile, right? That's the verse you're talking about, at least partially.
It sounds like every Wednesday now is going to be Zach versus the congregation.
No,
Well, I
it's
mean, if it is, it's gonna. It'll be like the third week, or no, it'll be the fourth week now.
That's a good transition sentence.
but that's a simile. That doesn't mean it is. Like, that's like a metaphor. Like, you can't just take metaphors literally. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I told you my foot was 17 feet long, would you believe me? My foot? No, you wouldn't. Because what if I said it was 17 feet, right? Then you'd be like, oh, this is a simile. Doesn't mean you actually are, or doesn't mean it actually is. So 7,000 years, or 7 days, 1,000 years each for one day. Like, you're taking the verse way out of context.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
just don't.
if they don't accept any of this, then what? We just have one more millennium to go before they'll abandon all this nonsense.
No, probably by another couple years. I guess like 100 years, or I mean, they're thinking it's really close. Like
Well, of course, they've been doing this since what date? Oh, right, ever since Jesus died, right? Probably. Like,
I
oh,
don't
he's
know.
coming any
I was I
minute.
was I was reading some of Don Preston's book when
Which
I
one?
was Can God Tell Time? And
No,
it
Okay.
makes a pretty
he's on the
good
watch.
argument. Um, Let me get it really quick.
You
Maybe I
didn't hear
have
my
to.
joke? No, he
What?
can't tell time. He cannot tell time because he does not have a watch.
Oh,
Ha! Yeah, see, terrible joke.
I thought he
All right.
had watched it.
He had Watchmen. Good one. That one was better.
I mean, I could, if you're up to it, I could read like a chapter. I thought this was a really good chapter, though.
I mean, if you're trying to read, like, we're down to listen. I mean,
What is
Okay.
it about?
It's the divine timeline.
oh, you're
It's
not reading
they
actual scripture?
no, it's Don Preston.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, if it's done, I guess we can listen. All right.
I mean, he is our master. Just
How many
kidding.
pages is it?
Not
I mean,
12.
I'll show you really quick. It's a small little thing. Hold on. Let me see. Hold on. Let's flip this camera. And so it's not really like a huge book, but it's just this. I mean, a little bit. I mean, I can kind of skim through a little bit, but it's just
Whatever you were going to read.
it's just really interesting. I guess if I could just give like my 2 little cents about it. Like if you can go to Luke 21 verse 8, and somebody read that.
Luke 21, verse 8.
Yeah.
Oh, crap. I'm not at Luke. Oh, I was just there. Luke. Lucas, where are you? Luke. Okay, got him. 10. Sorry, it's the King James, you know?
Okay.
Hard to find.
And this is the authorized version, correct?
Yeah, totally. Why would I have the unauthorized version?
Good.
So 28 is like the second to last verse, right? I mean, the second to last chapter. XXII. No, that's XXVII.
Well, I know the last chapter is 24, so
Wait, where do you want me to go?
21.
XXI.
What?
XXI.
XXI. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
then verse 8.
VIII.
That's the one reason why I hate the Brenton.
And he said, that's how it should start?
Yes.
I don't know what it says, but
You want me to read just that verse or how?
yeah, just that verse is fine.
And
But
he
again,
said,
just to give a little.
Wait.
Mm.
You said, and he said? I thought it would be, and he saith.
No, and he said, comma, take
Okay.
heed with a capital letter that ye be not deceived, colon, for many shall come in my name being capital, saying, saying, comma, I am Christ, italics, comma, and the time draweth near, spelt incorrectly, colon, go, spelt incorrectly, ye not therefore after them. So it
Okay,
says,
did you guys
and
get
he
that?
said, take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. I see how they can do.
That's
And
weird.
and the
because-
time draweth near, you go no, not for after them. See, but
Right,
a
but
lot of people would take that and say like, oh, that's saying that he's saying don't say that he's Christ because
that's odd because the thing is that the Apostolic Bible Polyglot for the New Testament uses the Textus Receptus. So the Textus Receptus says ego eimi, saying I am he, not saying I am the Christ.
Mm. So what were you trying to go with that, Zach?
So it says that so pretty much what Don Preston makes the case is that Jesus is telling his disciples, do not believe false, people that say the time is near. Right? Do you guys see that in that verse?
Wait,
So
what?
there was only a few years difference, if that, between him and Peter saying we're in the last days.
No. Not
Oh,
saying
you
in
know,
the last
I see.
days,
I
but
no, I
saying the
see.
time
Okay,
is
now
near.
that you said that, I see exactly what you're saying. Read it again, Stacy, one more time after you said that.
Read what? Verse 8?
Yeah, just read it to yourself.
What
and
scripture is that again?
At least I did,
Luke 21 verse 8.
Thank you.
and you'll see exactly what he just said.
And remember, this passage, this chapter, is the Olivet Discourse, but Luke's, I guess.
Okay,
rendering.
listen. Right. So here it goes. For many, I read it wrong. Let me reread it, if I may. And he said, take heed that you be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not after them.
Yeah, so, Jesus is warning his disciples, saying, hey, you know, people are going to come, false prophets, and say the end is near. Do not go after those people because they're false.
But
But,
did you catch how I said the end? Yeah.
yeah. Hey, Rob, how's it going, bro?
Hi.
Going good. How
Yep.
about you guys?
Just kind of going over, I was talking about the Hebrew roots debate things that I was doing before, and then I had talked to them about, I have a book from Don Preston.
Keep going. Just don't lose your train of thought.
No, I won't. And the book is Can God Tell Time?
Gotcha.
By
I've
Don
read that
K.
one before.
Preston. Yeah, so he makes the chapter is really small. I just started, so you literally just got in right on the time. And this chapter is titled Luke 21 verse 8, the divine timeline. And so the premise that he's making is that Jesus warns his disciples in Luke 21 verse 8 saying, and he said, watch that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ. Also, the time has come. Do not go after them. And what's interesting is then Jesus starts giving them these these points that like, hey, these things have to happen first, then the end is near. Like also in Matthew chapter 24. What was somebody going to say?
No, I'm saying you didn't read verse 8 correctly. You read it wrong.
Oh, I just read what my Bible says.
No, you read it. The words were correct, but your tones and whatnot were wrong.
Okay, sorry.
You read it.
And
You put the commas in
he
the wrong places and such.
said, watch that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. Also, the time has come. Do not go after them. Is that better?
That's better. At least now he can get the context of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, because before he just couldn't. Actually, I should put my video camera on because if we
Because
talk to Stacy, he'll tell you that body language is about 90% of
Exactly.
communication.
But it wasn't about it. It says right. Just this is what you're trying. You yourself pointed out to me just now 5 seconds ago. He says, "Take heed that ye be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, forget all the commas and all that I said earlier. I am Christ, and the time draweth near." See, like you got to include them both in the same sentence. I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not after them.
I think
Period.
I think he believed that.
One more time, Albert. All I was saying was just read it correctly. That's all. Keep going.
So Christ says, be weary of these two things. These people are going to say these two things. Is that your main point?
I mean, really, you don't get it after all. Wow. Stop. Mute yourself. Sounds like you're blowing up a balloon or sitting on a beanbag. What are you doing? Mute yourself.
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah. What are you blowing up balloons over there?
My wife was giving me a hug.
Oh, well, that's also acceptable.
Don't mute that. No.
You're forgiven.
Oh gosh.
But no, read all I want you to do, just like I want you to do with Jude 5-6 or whatever it is, 6 and
Okay,
7.
well, I like your
Just
enthusiasm.
read it all
on
together. You're
this.
the one that showed me this, Zach. So look, it says, "Take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near." Read it all together. That's all.
Right. So you're saying that Christ is telling them to be weary of people that are going to be saying these two things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Right. I get it.
Good. So now what?
One more time.
No. What's your point? Like, come on. You're supposed to say something now. No.
I got something for you. 2 Timothy 3. I think that's a big reason why people think the end is near. where it talks about the love money, love self.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has to do with people's hearts and the stupid stories they like to chase.
Well, I think people think, oh, that's clearly now, not back then.
Well, that too. They want to be special. That's also true. At least in my experience. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to be
All
popular.
special.
As you can tell from my view count.
We're like snowflakes. We're all special.
Yeah, exactly. But we're all gathered together here, but nobody else wants to, partake. Not all the masses, if you will.
But
Or maybe Google just hides the view count.
Well, that's a possibility.
I saw a video the other day that supposedly had 100 views. I'm like, if this has 100 views, I'd be highly surprised. More like 500,000.
But going back to what Zach said in verse 8, listen, it says all of what I just said. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. I read that differently. Go ye not therefore after them, but ye shall hear of wars and commotions. Be not terrified, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not by and by. So he just told you twice there to your face that it's not time for a while.
One more time, Albert.
So Jesus's timeline is different than God's because Jesus is like talking about, current affairs, current events, and
No, he's
when
telling
God
them
said
about 70 AD.
his
It's not
time.
time.
No. God's days is at the end of the week, so it's several thousands of years. Whereas Jesus is saying
Oh.
it's
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. I see where you're rowing your boat.
well, yeah, I'm gonna just give me like give me like 2 minutes. I just gotta post an essay really quick.
Sure.
all right.
Take your time, bro.
What
Take your
I
time.
think is really good when I read this chapter in Don Preston's book, I was like, wow, that was actually pretty interesting.
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah,
But if you're not getting even what I'm putting down right now,
no,
like,
dude, I'm the one that brought the verse up. That's what I'm.
okay, well then you're just being really sarcastic with me, and I can't tell because you're very good at that. You're very good at doing that.
Very sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. Sometimes I can't tell if you're joking or
He's
for
being
real.
sarcastic.
So, Albert, were you thinking that Zach was thinking that Jesus said, "Beware of these people; they're going to say that I am He," and then Christ says, "Oh, and by the way, the time is near." Are you saying that's what Zach was saying, or what?
No, I'm just thinking that he lost his mind there for a second. I was like, "What? You're not going to agree with me after this? Like, what? You showed it to me. Like, that's all."
I mean, I didn't think I was disagreeing with
I don't
what you
understand.
were. Yeah, I'm confused too, but I still
I
love you
need
guys.
to see you guys' body language.
It's going to be a mystery. Oh well.
All right, I'm
Anyway,
about to,
do what you got to do.
Yeah, I just saved it. I had to do a essentials of ministry. There's like, cool stuff.
Application.
Yeah, college stuff, I guess. I don't know. But I'm about to post it. It's worth 100 points. It's a literal whole grade level right there. Course content. I know this is really good for the live feed too.
I'm just saying, man. Like, to me, like it says right there, man. I have to interrupt you, but he's just saying, right? He said into them, right? You tell him, since you know.
Tell me.
Yo, when Jesus died, what was he telling them? He was like, "Yo, it's gonna happen in your lifetime, right?"
Yeah.
I
Right,
like
well,
the
there you go. Read it again.
The NIRV translation of Matthew
be-
23:36.
Oh,
Many people.
so
Go for it.
Let me read it here. It says,
NIRV, the New International Revised Version.
yeah,
Okay.
it says, what I'm about to tell you is true. All this will happen to those who are now living.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Wait, what was the word you just said?
Matthew 23:36.
No, what was the last word that you said?
Now living.
Oh, okay.
Instead of those standing here, it says those who are now living.
That's even better. See? That means we win again.
All right, so I just posted my homework thing. So, okay, so I guess what Don Preston's throwing down is I'm gonna just read part of it. I guess it's
Okay.
not really that long. Trust me.
Okay.
Okay, it says so. Luke 21 verse 8. The
Page
divine
and
time.
verse, cite it. No, I'm
This
just kidding.
is Can God Tell Time by Don K. Preston. Chapter, not those chapter breaks, but it's under the heading Luke 21 verse 8, the divine timeline on page 16. And just so everyone can know, this is what the book looks like. Right there. Page number, you got that?
We got it. 16.
Perfect. Okay. So, when Jesus' disciples asked him about the end of the age, Matthew chapter 24, verse 2, Jesus began to explain the events that had to happen before that consummative event. However, he warned them that before the end would come, there would be false signs and false prophecies, saying the end was near when it actually was not near, or was
Right.
not actually near.
Correct.
Now, this is the verse. Take heed that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time has drawn near. Therefore, do not go after them. Jesus proceeds to give two major events that would signal the nearness of the end. Now, this is his whole premise, these two major events here. The first one is the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to the nations. Then comes the end. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, then let those who are in Judea flee. After giving these signs, so I guess that was the first and second signs, I guess, So the
Right.
first one is the going into the kingdom, the gospel, going to the end of the world, and then the abomination. So it says, after giving these signs, Jesus said, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Matthew chapter 24, verse 33. The fulfillment of the world mission and the appearance of the abomination would signal that the end truly has drawn near. This is extremely important. Jesus was speaking to living, breathing human beings that told them that they would see these events. He was not speaking abstractly. He told his disciples that they would experience false teachings saying the end was near or present, when in fact it was not. And all of these things happened very early in the first century. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul had to write to the church to warn them not to believe that the Lord had already come. Just as Jesus said false prophets would come saying the end had come or had drawn near before it was. Paul had to deal with this problem as early as 49 AD. Jesus told, anybody want to stop there or just keep going?
Hey,
Yeah, probably a good idea to stop.
Yeah. So I guess if we go to Second Thessalonians, I think that's when it talks about how that people were saying that the resurrection already happened. I think that's the chapter, or let me see, because he doesn't give a actual. He just says Second Thessalonians chapter 2. So let me go there and see. Maybe it's right in the beginning. Maybe I don't know. Second Thessalonians chapter 2 says, "Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered together with Him." We ask you, brothers, not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by spirit or spoken word, or a letter seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first. Then the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposed. Okay, so I guess that literally just.
The rebellion. Wasn't the rebellion in 66?
Who is the son of
Um,
destruction or perdition? Like who
I guess
that?
like the main focus was what he was trying to get at is definitely, Paul had to address an early church saying like, hey, you know, the end's not happened. It's not near yet. There's,
Right, but
I
the
guess.
the rebellion is the rebellion the church body against God, or is it the nation of Israel against Rome?
I mean,
I
it
think
could
the
be the
latter.
rebellions of the Jewish people, like the zealots, like I
It's the
guess
latter.
really making Rome come into
It's definitely the rebellion of the Jews against the Romans.
with that zealot period
100%.
and all that kind of stuff. I want to
You can
look to
prove it.
see when uh, the ESV says the dating could be for this. Yeah,
Who
it
cares
says
what they say the
49,
dating is? They could lie.
49 to 51. Well, I mean, I think some of these are pretty good, close for sure.
Okay, fair enough. All right, if you think they're close, all right, fair enough.
So, okay, so
And 2 Thessalonians, that's when Claudius reigned. It's pretty much saying like, oh, Claudius is reigning now. And next one who reigns after this is going to be the man of perdition.
yeah, the lawless man of sin or whatever, which
Nero.
would be Nero. Yeah. I mean, anything else that I've said? I mean,
No, we know that that's Nero, but everything you said, like I have a follow up thing, but like after we're done.
okay. I mean, so I guess I definitely can see what he's saying that there were two events that needed to happen. Then you can say that we're closer, and then now the time is near because
Right.
you have in the beginning of the church, the gospel hasn't been preached. But what's interesting is when you look at the writings of Paul and Peter, when they said the end is near, they're writing in, you know, 58 AD, 60 AD, later, when they could say, because Paul writes in the Colossians and in the book of Romans saying that the gospel has gone out into all the world. So he like check marks that, uh, I guess, that first sign of the
Yeah,
major
why would he
event.
even go on to say that? You know what I mean?
What does the ESV say for the date of Second Peter?
Second Peter, let me look.
Hey,
Second
can I
Peter.
just while you're looking that up, can I hit you
Yeah.
with the biggest sledgehammer ever?
No, that might hurt.
I just
No,
want
it
you all
will
to
hurt.
know. I just want you all to know. I
Hmm.
just want you to know that I am Christ and the time is near. Okay? So,
Yes. They're saying 64 to 67 AD.
just kidding.
You're
I'm
saying
obviously not. I was
perhaps
doing it
during
on
the
purpose.
persecution by Nero who died. So yeah, so definitely before 68 AD. And I know Armand had the dating in his chronological order or whatever that Peter was written after Revelation. So Revelation was like 62, 63 AD. So even these people also are saying, which is after 62, 63. So 64 to 67 AD.
66. Yeah, 66 is when the visions were seen. 66 is when Nero broke ground and saw the phantom apparitions, apparently.
So,
So,
yeah.
mhm.
Anything else? And I'll just keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. So Jesus told his disciples that they would see the fulfillment of the Great Commission and the abomination of desolation. And when they did, they would know that the end truly has drawn near. This is critical. In Romans, dating around 57 to 59 AD, Paul wrote that the gospel had been preached in all the world. And then also in Colossians and, all those, whatever verses. The apostle declared that the gospel had been preached to every creature under heaven, to all men, to all the world, etc. It is also at this time that Paul proclaimed that Jesus' parousia, which is the coming, was at hand. Philippians 4, verse 5. I'm going to just read that real quick. Philippians 4, verse 5 says, uh, let your reasonableness, whatever, be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Let me just see if it says parousia anywhere. I can't read the Greek there. Near. I don't see the word parousia, but I guess that would be okay. But whatever. I'm gonna just keep going.
Is it
Uh,
Parousia or Perugia?
mm, Let me just look at this straight up Greek.
That was a trick question. They were the same word.
No. Okay. Okay, that so it says, yeah, so the parousia was at hand, Philippians 4 verse 5, and that Peter, the author of 2 Peter 3:8, stated the end of all things has drawn near. The time has come for the judgment to begin. 1 Peter 4:7 and verse 17. And James wrote that the coming of the Lord was near. I believe that's chapter 5 of James, by the way. Um, the timeline in these texts is critical. At an early time, false prophets appeared in fulfillment of Jesus' predictions, saying the end had drawn near or had come. The apostles, um, cognizant of Jesus' warnings, rejected these prophecies or prophets, reminding the disciples of what had to happen before the end could come. Then, some 10 years later, when the fulfillment of the first of the two major signs given by Jesus, the inspired writers say the end had drawn near. Jesus had said, when you see these things, you will know it, the parousia is at the door. Matthew chapter 24, verse 33. James, living at the time when he witnessed the fulfillment and appearance of the first sign, he echoed the very words of Jesus, saying, he is at the door. James 5 verse 9. This divine timeline teaches us some important lessons. It shows that it truly was Jesus' generation that was to see the sign Jesus foretold. Jesus was not saying that the fulfillment of the world mission or the appearance of the abomination was to be centuries in the future. This timeline, coupled with the apostles' rejection of the message of those who said the end was already present, also shows that the events were fulfilled in the first century. You want me to keep going? Anybody have anything to say?
Yeah,
Or
I don't think you really need to. Any
I,
comments thus
Yeah,
far?
there's a
I do, but go ahead, Matthew,
Okay.
first.
Well, Matthew chimed in first, so Stacy, can you hold your thought?
regarding the world mission. If think about this, if the world mission, the gospel going to every man, took any longer than one generation, then every man wouldn't hear it.
I see what you're saying.
True.
It has to be within one generation, whatever it's talking about.
Interesting. I
Stacy?
never thought of that.
Why?
Now,
Because if it took 2,000 years long, people would die before it got to certain places, and most people would not hear it. It just doesn't work.
Well, and a new generation would be born, so then you'd have to start all over.
So, in order for the gospel to reach everybody who is alive, it has to happen within one generation.
Correct. I agree. Right? It has to be within the generation that he said it would. He actually said in another verse somewhere else. He said, "You shall not finish going through all the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes," which means we win.
Which means
Yeah.
it's pertaining to Israel, and it had to be within that generation.
100%.
Good point. Stacy, what you gonna say something?
Yeah, Stacy, what's up?
yes. What is the dating of James?
James, let me see.
Doesn't everybody have a different date for every book?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the dates.
They say
They're all pretty
62.
close within a few years, though.
No,
They say what? What's the
no, he
date?
died in
I couldn't hear.
62. Yeah, I guess there would be. I guess this doesn't line up because they're saying like 50 AD. So then that wouldn't be, I guess, backed up by what, what's his face is saying here, Todd Preston.
Why is that?
They're saying that he wrote this in 48 to 49 AD.
Yeah,
Now, when
what's the problem with that?
because his whole premise here is that because James says in chapter 5 that the end had happened, that it was very near, that the judge was standing at the door.
I thought James was in the 60s.
Well, what about Act 12:2?
I
Well,
can't tell you the timing on anything in the
yeah,
book of
okay. I
Acts.
mean, like, what? Why are we jumping over here again? Why are we trying to
Since
figure out what the
I was
timing
asked
is?
the question, that's why.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question too. Because that actually, if we take what the ESV Bible says, and I actually do think I remember in my teaching from my schools, they would say that James was one of the first books of the New Testament written.
Okay.
I'll
So
grab
that would
my Bible
actually
dictionary here.
that would actually fly in the face to his premise here, because what Don Preston's saying is that they couldn't say the end was near when the first sign hadn't happened yet. So if Paul says to Second Thessalonians in the same time period when James writes, saying the end has not happened yet, pretty much in chapter 2 of Second Thessalonians, that the rebellion had to happen first, then the end would come in a sense.
Yeah, this book says 90 to 155, so I'd have to put it with saying I'd say that'd be a 60 comparison to Revelation being in
That's
that
what.
same period.
So you're saying that James wrote in 90? They're saying
What's that?
the book of James.
So they're saying James 90 to 155, so that would be
Really?
the same as Revelation being in 90, so that would be in the 60s then.
Let me look at that too.
Let's see what Google says.
Because when I'm looking at my Bible dictionary, it says this is the Holman Illustrated Bible
It
Dictionary.
says 62 AD.
Yeah, that's what it says. Is that when is that his death?
No, that's when it would have been written.
Hmm.
It says
'Cause
before 69, probably 62.
Oh my gosh. As you guys say all these things, like, this is just like, I'm looking at this, like, it's funny. All these things are just lining up like dominoes. Funny.
I mean, I do like the older date because then it would line up with what Don Preston's saying.
Well, he's right. He's right, but I don't know if you guys are actually seeing what he's saying.
We are. You're just double checking.
Okay, so verse okay, go ahead and tell me what verse 16 says. 21.
All he's saying is that
Luke.
some things weren't near and some things were near, and they line up with those dates.
No, I'm saying Luke 21:16. What's it
That
say?
would be near. Isn't that just talking about the surrounding of armies?
Actually, well, no.
Or is
What?
that 21:20?
Well, did you read it? Did you
16
read what
says,
21:16
and your
says?
parents and your brothers and your relatives of your friends will betray you, and they will kill some of you.
Right. How's that fun news? But read the verse before that.
Okay.
I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your Satans will not be able to gainsay nor resist. Or adversaries. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But see, like, he's giving them secret knowledge here, right? He's saying, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
but look at all the things he warned you of, right?" So from your verse that you started with verse 8, you shall hear of wars and commotions. Be not terrified. See, remember, this is the Pax Romana, right? The peace of Rome. Don't forget,
Mm-hmm.
that's the time. You got to remember what time frame you're in. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then it said, but when you shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass. But the end is not by and by. It's not yet. So then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes, Mount Vesuvius, in diverse places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs uh, shall there be from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you. So let me ask you, before Mount Vesuvius erupted, you tell me when Vesuvius was.
I don't know.
You tell me when they were being persecuted. You tell me when Rome. Well, I'm just saying, think about it. Look at it. You don't know about Mount Vesuvius? That's the earthquake going off. That's all the trouble. That's all the earthquakes is Mount Vesuvius going off. It has to be. Right? I mean, that makes it true, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, look at it first. Don't just agree with me. Sheesh.
No, I mean I agree with 100% of what you're saying. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm only reading what I'm reading here is to, I guess, in the sense of going along with what the Hebrew roots people kind of like flowed in like perfectly what we were saying before about,
Why would
you
Mount
know,
Vesuvius be up? That was in like 79, it looks like.
And 79 is before 70, is it not?
No, it's not.
yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, I would
It's
again not
AD,
go.
wasn't it? Not BC. Yeah, it's
Shit.
AD, so it's after.
Shit, you might have me there.
Yeah, so forget the names of volcanoes or earthquakes or whatever, but the main thing is that you can see, within the Book of Acts that there were earthquakes.
Yeah, there was still earthquakes. Like,
Yeah, there was not in Acts. What is it, Acts 13? There's a great earthquake or something like that. No, it was a famine. Sorry, but there were earthquakes. That happened multiple times in the New Testament after Matthew chapter 24 was spoken. Even when Yeshua, died, there was an earthquake.
fair enough.
But the main thing that I was just trying to bring up with what I was reading here with some Don Preston was that because people have this idea of the 6,000 year period and things like that, and well, it's just getting us back to the timeline because you know the only way that these authors of the New Testament could say that the end was near, because think about it, if you take Luke 21 verse 8 saying that you're a false prophet if you say the end is near and it's not, well, how in the world can you determine who's a false prophet or not? Because the end is near for everybody. So 2,000 years ago, they were saying the end is near, and
A good point to address for your Wednesday crew.
That's the
yeah,
same point that I always make.
yeah. So I think Luke 21 verse 8 is a pretty powerful verse when you
It's the
take that
verse,
in.
no, it's the verse that says if a prophet tells you a prophecy and it doesn't come to pass, like the only way you can even follow that is if it's a prophecy that's given that could be fulfilled within your lifetime. Because otherwise, he's telling you information that is completely retarded. He's like, hey, watch out for the guy who's going to tell you a false prophecy, but you're going to die before it happens. Like, doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. Right?
Yeah, but this is not really dealing with prophecy anymore. This is dealing with exegesis.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because if you just like really like think about it, like anybody that thinks that the end, like it just came to my mind, like, okay, so if Jesus says, okay, you're a false prophet if you say the end is near and it's not really near, right? But
Yeah.
2,000
Scripture
years
says don't be.
ago, you have multiple inspired apostles of Jesus Christ saying the end is near, saying those exact same words, but
Uh, he did say it was near, but he also told you to watch out, right? So
no, but you have these apostles, so it, either the end really wasn't near and it was thousands of years in the future, then that would make them false prophets. Or when you say the end is near, it's irrelevant because with the Lord is as one day with the Lord is 1,000 years. So they could say the end is near, but in our earthly time that's a long time, but in God's time it's really quick. So then that would mean it would be like pointless for Jesus to say, "Oh, you're a false prophet if you say the end is near and it's not near." I mean, does that even make sense to anybody? I mean, it makes sense in my mind. I'm just probably
Yes,
not articulating it
it's
properly.
actually a trick question because either way they answer it, you got them.
Yeah. I have to probably articulate it better. Because in
Well,
my mind, I'm saying it cool, but I don't know if it's coming out that
no,
way.
no, it's not about saying cool. It's about being right. So,
Yeah, but when I mean cool, I mean being like, you know, you can actually understand it. People can
Right.
hear it and be okay.
right.
Was Jesus warning the disciples about the disciples themselves being wrong in the first century? Or was Jesus talking about something that was just completely irrelevant and that the disciples were saying it was near, but it didn't really mean anything because it's been 2,000 years?
Yeah, or it means like saying that the end is near is just arbitrary because you can never be wrong.
Or maybe it's
Because
more like Don Preston said.
I can never be wrong. Well, in that case, I have to ask you the question.
Flag.
Sorry. Yeah, that's definitely a flag. But why was Jesus again going around casting out demons? Yeah. Don't answer that question. Go on with what you were saying, but think about it in your subconscious.
perfect. I mean, it's just like okay, so in my mind, it's like okay, so God is like, you know, because think about it, like they were saying this 2,000 years ago, so that would mean somebody now can say the end is near, and that would be just as equal or just the same level of urgency as when Paul says it. But you know, does that make Paul a false prophet? Because it's near for me, but it wasn't really near for him because it was
No, but
two
what people
thousand.
believe, like John MacArthur, is that God is deceptive in the fact that he wants every generation to believe that they are
Yeah,
the one.
Well, maybe it wasn't really near until like after like 50 or something like that.
yeah, but
From
that's what
30 to
Don's.
50, maybe it really wasn't near.
You
Yeah,
really say
that's what
that.
Don
I mean,
Preston's saying, and that makes a lot of sense because you have these two major signs that the gospel needs to be preached in all the world. Then the end is near, or then the end can come, according to
yeah,
Matthew chapter 12, verse 14. So
what I
that's
read.
why Don Preston is saying that once this first major sign is accomplished and fulfilled, like it says in the New Testament, Colossians chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, Romans verse 1, chapter 1, verse 8. Once you look at that and you go, okay, so now we can actually say the end is near because now, the abomination is going to happen. Then it's too late. Then it's already done.
Minus 50 DKB.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
Plus 50.
obviously, no, you can't do that.
to what?
Whatever you just said, Don Preston can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous.
Why? What's wrong with it?
I mean, it makes logical sense to me.
Oh, it's not. You'd have to say it all over again, but no, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, what Don Preston's saying is, like, yeah, what Jesus is saying is something in the future that the end is going to be near once these signs start to happen.
Right, and they already did happen. Like, they already happened. Like, the
Yeah,
signs,
they
like,
they
But they
happened
hadn't
already.
happened.
They
But
hadn't
and you
happened when
can't.
Jesus
Oh,
said it.
right. I forgot. Don Preston probably believes in double fulfillment. Like,
no,
No,
he's not
Don.
saying double.
either
Single.
way, like, he still believes future. Like that.
No, Don
No, they
Preston is
were
the full
future for
preterist.
back then, not us.
So then, why would he say such a thing like that? Like you're saying,
No, Don
Some
Preston's.
things hadn't happened yet. Like Matthew 24 was for the future for them.
there's no. Oh, for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
for them,
Right.
Audience
not for
priority.
us.
Okay, for
So what
them.
Don
Okay.
Preston's saying is that for the apostles,
Okay.
they were allowed to say the end is near because the end was really near because the gospel was preached in all the world. That
Right.
the end of all things was about to happen in their lifetime. So for us today, we can't say that because it already happened in a sense.
Agreed.
So
Well, it
that's
did.
what I've been reading the whole time.
It's not that it. Okay. It's not. Yeah. It's not that it maybe happened in a sense. It's that it did happen. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should just keep reading or if we
Yeah.
kind of
Go
like.
ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, does anybody else care? Or I mean,
No.
Go for it.
okay. So I pretty much read half of it already.
Actual scriptures. We can go to the actual scriptures if you want.
Yeah. So if I quote a scripture, I mean, he quotes some of the scriptures, but then sometimes
Sure.
he just like references it. So if he doesn't quote it, then we can
Hey,
go to it. So this
go
one
wherever
is
you want.
this timeline when related to the later epistles after the fulfillment of the first of the two major signs given by Jesus, in which inspired writers emphatically stated in every in a wait, sorry, this is a quote. In a very, very little while, the one who is coming will come and will not delay. Hebrews 10:37 proves that their time statements must be taken literally. Jesus had told them that they could tell when the end had not drawn near, and he told them when they could tell that it had drawn near. Thus, when the biblical writers Thus, when the biblical writers, writing in light of Jesus' warnings, said that what he had foretold was fulfilled, and that the end had drawn near, we cannot extrapolate those statements of nearness 2,000 years into the future. We cannot elasticize these statements of at hand into meaninglessness. All statements that the end was near made before the inspired writers said it was near were false. All statements that the end is near, written or stated after the biblical writers said it was near, are false statements. The only preachers, the only prophets, the only teachers who were ever given the divine insight into the timeline of Jesus' return, were Jesus' first century inspired disciples, and they said the end had drawn near 2,000 years ago. If their statements that the end was near were as wrong as those before them, then they too were false teachers. Note again that Jesus told his disciples that fellow believers would say the end had drawn near when in fact it had not. Luke 21, verse 8. He told his apostles to reject those false prophets. However, he then gave them signs by which they could themselves know that the end was near. Matthew chapter 24, verses 32 through 33. I'm going to just read that real quick. Matthew 24, 32 through 33 says, hold on. Nope, sorry. 24. 24 verses 32 to 33. From the fig tree, learn the lessons. As soon as its branch becomes tender and put forth its leaves, you know the summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you know the end is near at the very door or very gates. So the disciples, upon
Then,
seeing the... Sorry, I'm sorry.
so then the budding of the fig tree is the rejuvenation of the nation of Israel, which is the church, which is the body of Christ. Is that right?
Um,
Because when Aaron's staff budded, it became a priesthood, right? That was every tribe had a staff, and the staff that was budded. So there was a new priesthood that took place after the budding, right?
mm, I would say no, but in a sense, because the budding was that people didn't want, Moses and Aaron, so that was like the test that that they did, which just proved that Aaron is
Right. But
correct.
life was given to the staff.
Yeah, in the budding process, yeah. To
So,
prove that he is the legitimate one.
right. So the fig tree, but the fig tree bringing out leaves is showing that the fig tree is being now rejuvenated, and the fig tree this time is for true Israel, not for false Israel.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I always took it as like, just as like an analogy, saying like, so once all these signs started taking place, now you know, okay, that the time is near, right? Just as when you see a tree in its season producing,
I
becoming
know, but
tender.
the key word though, it's not analogy. It's really parable. Learn the parable of the fig tree,
Yeah,
which means that the fig tree has to stand for something.
yeah, I know. Definitely, the futurists definitely make it stand for something,
Well,
which
they
would be
make it
Israel.
stand for like borders and for a all not all Israel is Israel. So they use the other Israel.
Well, I guess because the fig tree is like, I guess, associated with you know Israel, like Jesus
Which
cursed with
Israel?
the fig tree.
Which Israel?
I think Jesus mentions like curses the fig tree, talking about that like those people in the first century.
Right. So when Jesus talks about the fig tree, it's always the same, or is it different? Like when Paul talks about Israel.
Not sure. I mean, anybody else can give 2 cents on that? I mean,
I got a
Matthew,
quick secondary question after we answer that one.
because I'm trying to figure out how. Let's just say this is the true Church of Israel. I would say the true Church of Israel started producing its leaves in the beginning of the church, like Pentecost, like when they were like really like booming and stuff. Not because this would be towards the end, like what Don Preston, what we were saying, like late 50s, early 60s. So these
can
signs,
you
so
read 32 one more
yeah,
time?
yeah, from the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branches become tender and puts out its leaves, you know summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that it is near at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. That's why I think 32, the fig tree is just a parable of, like, the fig tree is actually all the signs that Jesus just spoke about. And when you see these signs start to come to pass, now you know that you're about to get fruit. You're about to reap from this tree. So when you see the gospel preached into all the world and you start seeing the armies encircling Jerusalem, like, it is so near. Like, it is at the door. Like, I mean, that's how I see it. And then he sums it all up and says, truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place, which would be encompassing of all the signs and everything.
Is it a parable, or do you take it literal when Jesus saw Nathanael and he said, "Before Philip called you while you were under the fig tree, I saw you."
I don't know.
So anyway, continue.
But what were you thinking about that, though?
Well, I'm just thinking that the fig tree putting out its leaves, is showing that summer is near, and that it's the summer, which is the heat and the day of the Lord. So, but that doesn't mean that summer is just right there. So when you have the leaves budding and that's in spring, and then that summer is right around the corner.
Hmm. I would have to
Well,
probably
I
like
believe the
look at that a
destruction of the
little
temple
more.
happened in August, right?
I know it started around Passover. Let me to like 4 months or something like that.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about like 1 year time frame. I'm talking about the parable of the 1 year time frame, and saying, that a couple of decades down the road is when the summer is going to come. I certainly don't see it 2,000 years.
Yeah. I don't know. Still at this moment, I just see it as like kind of like, that analogy that, talking about the signs, that the fig tree is the signs, like all these things. So once you see all these things happening,
Yeah, but don't fall for their sorcery. Come on, Peter. Right? Once you see all these things, like, so you're telling me that the generation that sees all these things, that's the one? Like, yeah,
no, it's
well, they
that
already saw
generation.
it. That was the generation. So you can't double fulfill, right?
Agreed.
That's right. Zach is a full
Can't do
preterist.
it. I know. I was saying it for the people that mother.
We the people fight
I'm
the
just gonna
power.
I'm just gonna quit.
No.
But speaking of victory, does anyone else have a tough time? Like, I was looking at the verse of the day, Romans 8:18.
Well, I didn't see the verse of the day, but what Romans 8:18? What happened?
Yeah.
For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worth the comparison of the glory that
Yeah.
is revealed to us.
Does anyone have like a tough time? Like, okay, I want everything now. I don't want to have to wait to heaven to end the suffering. I was like,
Are you suffering
I
right
was
now?
praying for like encouragement, and I got Romans 8:18. I'm like, this is not encouraging. Or maybe it should be.
Are you suffering right now? Like, are you personally suffering?
I don't know.
I mean,
It's
I'm
all
not.
perception.
You? Exactly. See, there you go. But I mean, if you are actually hurting, like, please do tell. Maybe not here, but somewhere else. Right?
No, I definitely see what you're saying, though, Rob. I mean,
It seems like heaven's such a unknown and so far away in some aspects, but yet it's
So far,
eternity.
but
This is just a little glimpse here.
is it? Oh, that's a good way to look at it, right? Though, like this is like a glimpse. Like I
Right.
can't even imagine what creatures would be in heaven. We got birds and fish and frogs and tigers.
Well, that I'm just saying, like, it's really short here compared to eternity. This is like a speck of sand compared to all the dirt and sand on earth. And then I got to thinking, who do you remember? Like every day, do you go like, oh, today I remember George Washington, or I remember Albert Einstein? I mean, pretty much you go by every day of your life not remembering anybody really, other than maybe like every once in a while, maybe like a family member or something like that. And unless, maybe you guys are different. Maybe you do think of Albert Einstein or George Washington or some famous
I mean, I
person. I
think of
don't.
like my wife or my son, and
Right, that's what I'm saying. You think of a family member, but
can I consider Jesus? I mean, I do,
yeah, I think of Jesus, but I don't think of like, people. I think people just get forgotten over time.
Yeah.
They do. Even family members get forgotten over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my grandmother passed away like 2 years ago, and sometimes, I mean, I just
Yeah,
think
but
about her now. Like,
you have no idea who your great 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 grandmother is.
oh, yeah, I do.
You don't even know what.
Her name was Betty Lou. No, no
Betty
idea.
Lou.
I have no
Is that
idea.
the pinup doll?
I don't know. Just first thing that came to my mind.
It's something interesting to tell you guys. My son has been working on getting paperwork, documents from the family to become a dual citizen to Italy.
Okay.
Is that because he's married to an Italian, or
No, he's not married. He's with his girlfriend, but they're doing this together. She's Italian. I'm a 100% Sicilian, and so he's exactly half Italian. But all you have to be is you know one part Italian
Oh,
to
really?
yes, and you can become a citizen to Italy, and then you can go there and receive schooling for free.
Really? Wow. When did they start this?
I don't know, and I don't even know how he found out about it, but she's gotten. It's a lot of work. You have to get birth certificates, death certificates, and marriage certificates, and you have to go back so far to somebody in your family who was actually born there.
So both your parents are immigrants, Matthew?
Yeah, well, it's my grandparents who came here. My mom and dad were born here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But they're both from Sicily. Like
Yeah,
they're like both sides of the wow.
yeah,
Oh, we've got a purebred among the mutts.
right.
Well, I mean, how far do you? I mean, do you think like truly they're 100%? Like there couldn't have been like like 5 generations. Some
Well, there's a
Greek guy
mix.
could have came through.
There's a mix in everything. Like my sister has blonde hair and blue eyes, and she's 100% Sicilian. So somewhere down the line, the Italians mixed with the Swedes or something. Uh,
Yeah.
and I have green eyes, so there's
Yeah,
no.
whoever Rocky fought was your grandfather.
What's that?
So, being from Sicily, then aren't you mostly like Roman?
I suppose so.
That's cool though. I mean, do you think anybody in the world, even in those like African tribes, like do you think it's actually funny we just brought this up, but we were talking about my brother today, like, and I was like saying like, I mean, I don't even know, like, do you think anybody's like truly 100% anything?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, definitely, I would say certain cultures, are more staying within certain cultures than mixing cultures.
Yeah, like I had said to my brother, I was like, even those like African tribes that you're talking, like my brother was talking about, I was like, how do you know that, you know, 3,000 years ago or whatever, or not that long ago, maybe like 800, 900,000 years ago, whatever, that, some other tribe from, you know, South Africa or something, I don't know, like just took over everywhere and just kind of, you know, mixed with some of the people from Northern Africa, but
I
it would
don't
still be
think
like
uh,
mixed. I don't
I
know.
don't think big feet mix with any other primates, so they're probably pure.
Who?
Was Peleg after the flood or before the flood?
Um,
I was thinking before, but I was also thinking after, so I wasn't
no,
sure.
he's after.
Is
He
he?
is, yeah, there's his father is Ursula. Yeah, definitely after. He's about one, two,
So the
three,
Tower
like
of
four.
Babylon was after the flood?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you have to think, they were mixed before they got spread up, right?
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just YouTube it. There's
Yeah, that's
video
what I
proof, I'm
do.
sure, from back then.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that the flood was a worldwide event. Still, I'm kind of on the fence with that because in the book of Acts we just read that when Peter's talking to their Areopagus, he's saying that God allowed the nations to, go their own ways.
Okay.
So the judgment of the flood was to come down upon all those who were associated with Israel and the mixing of cultures and things pertaining to Israel, even though Israel wasn't a nation then, but it was a family.
Well, that family hasn't even been born yet at the flood time.
I'm not talking about the literal family. I'm talking about, the sons of Adam.
Oh,
Sons of Seth.
what about like the physical proof of like the world?
Like, what kind of physical proof is there that there was a worldwide flood?
Yeah. I mean, I know you've heard like all the debates and stuff like that. I mean, they talk
I
about.
mean, even if you say like the Grand Canyon and things like that, you could say that happened in the first reseeding of the waters in Genesis. Not to like throw a monkey in the wrench.
Yeah.
Okay, so where did the water? All right, so the water that come up from the bottom,
Hmm.
what was in the bottom when the water wasn't there?
I mean,
Water.
So there was more water? I don't understand.
there
There
Because
was
was
just
water
water.
under the earth
you can
and it
only
came
put,
above the earth.
right, you can only put so much water in a glass. So if
Yeah,
you
but it
raise,
would just
No,
say
but isn't
like
the Earth inside of a giant bubble within water? Like there's just water, and then he created an expanse in the water,
Yeah, the
which is
firmament.
I did
the
the math on
firmament.
that. There's definitely plenty of room in the earth to hold the water.
But
Yeah.
supposedly,
no, I'm not, I agree. The world could be full of water,
Mm-hmm.
but for the water to rise up,
it wasn't pulled up into oceans. That's the difference. It was under. There were no oceans. It was under the crust, the whole thing.
so are you saying then that the crust just sank and that's the reason why the water was
No,
lifted
it
up?
shut up.
Now it shifted. The water came up and then created in big gullies, which created the oceans.
Have you
Right.
ever
Oh,
heard
oh, oh.
about the moon crater theory, Stacy?
Well, the thing is that for water to shoot up means that there is going to be presence of water in place A, and it's going to shoot up to go to place B. Therefore, the water that is now in place B is not in place A.
Right. So it's just empty. Kind of like a catbird
So
can fill of water.
air, all right, so it was air
I would
that
think so.
pushed the water up.
It
Where
was
did that air
God.
come from?
Oh, as far as what made it go up, I have no idea other than just God's power. But as far as, what replaced it, I would think just air.
But then you got to think logically of where did the air come from? Because if the air was there too, then you have both air and water in place A. And so you have to have something else to be in place A to displace the water to make it go to place B.
You could have air underneath the water.
Yes, but you still need something else, more air or something, because you have a full amount of whatever it is in place A. And
Well,
then for
maybe, kind of
something,
like the splitting of the Red Sea. It could just been a miracle. Maybe not like a scientific, because we don't see rain today for 40 days all over everywhere. You know what I mean? Not 24/7 anyhow. So it'd been more of a miracle type thing, I think, than a scientific idea.
But
At
I do
least
know
that's
there
what
are
I
people
think.
that believe that that flood was just a local thing.
right.
What's that, Zach?
That there are people like, for example, the person that I know that teaches that or holds to that is Michael Miano. Michael Miano's, I'm pretty sure it's him because he also believes that there were like other humans before Adam and Eve. That pretty much Adam and Eve story, like Genesis, is just, it's not talking about like the creation of the universe. It's just the creation of like a covenant people, which would be Adam. But and he talks about like the flood was a local event. But I mean,
But wait, how can you have people before Adam? Because supposedly when Adam fell, death entered the world and sin.
I
Right.
mean, yeah,
Because
and then you
Adam
also have
was the first thinking man, the first man with a conscience,
what about
therefore sin
living?
the world.
Eve is her name is Chava, which means like living, like life, I guess, because she's the mother of all living. So were the people not alive before?
So you want to take that living to be completely literal, and then all of the mentions of death.
No, it could be both. But if she's the mother of all living, so
She is the woken
oh, she's the
woman.
woken of all living. But don't you think that would have to be?
In other words, I would think that that instance, living would be, he who abides in me and I in him. That, when you recognize that we're here and we're conscious and we're not just necessarily just existing, that would be life and more abundantly.
Now, how do you get other people there?
Well, maybe who adopts 6 little days or who doesn't?
Well, as far as the flood goes, if you look at a study of the waters in the book of Psalms, it's almost always referring to chaos, just mass chaos, the way David describes the waters, you know. So then Peter in Second Peter 3, when he's talking about the first deluge was by the waters, these are, if you think, well, these are physical waters. Oh, but then this fire he talks about, oh, well, that's spiritual. Well, why not be consistent? I would say that if Peter is talking about literal water flooding the entire earth, and that's how the world was destroyed then it's going to be literal fire. Or to be on the other side, but still be consistent, you would say that the waters represented chaos and destruction and things like that. And then also the fire is also spiritual, considering judgment. So both instances, either take both literal or both spiritual, I think would be more consistent than to take one literal and then one spiritual.
Yeah, I don't know who does that. Who takes one literal and one spiritual?
I think a
That's
lot
what
of people
most full preterists do.
I
No, I've
think a
never
lot of
heard of
people,
anything.
yeah, I think a lot of people believe that the worldwide flood had to do with physical H2O, but then the destruction by fire, oh, well, that's spiritual.
I say
No,
both are physical,
yeah, I'd say both are physical as well.
but
How do you get the physical, Zach?
but how can you do that as a full preterist?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
The heaven and earth was burned with fire and completely destroyed, which was
When?
the temple, 70 AD.
Yeah, but what he's saying is if it's global, it should be global then as well.
Well,
Right.
it's talking about the punishment on those people of that world. So the same thing, the world there for me in my mind
Okay,
is
so
the
right. Okay,
people of
so wait.
the people of that world.
Okay,
Those because the earth
okay, so
didn't
wait,
die,
wait. All
the
right,
earth
so
wasn't
great. That's great.
destroyed.
That's great. Because then would you say it would be more consistent for your belief to say that the flood happened to the people of covenant, just like the
No,
fire
because
happened? Oh, so
well,
you don't
no,
want to be
no, well,
consistent and say the
no,
flood was worldwide, but the fire is only for the covenant people.
no. Well, technically, it would be on everybody that's not in the covenant, I guess. Because the people that were in covenant with God were the ones that were saved from the fire, just like the
Were the
you know
Native
into the
Americans in Covenant?
Were the
well.
Native Americans burned up, or
I mean, it seems to me there was only 8 people on the ark. Everybody else wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
okay?
that's what we're
So
getting
that's
at.
the first deluge. So then the second one about fire. That
Yeah,
wasn't everybody in the world. I mean, everybody in the world died except that local
I
Okyumene.
mean, well, it does say that not one Christian was killed in that judgment.
So everybody else died.
Yeah, but not all Romans were killed.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's not just specifically Romans. I mean, there was judgment on those people as well.
All right. All right. Let me rephrase my consistency. So
Mhm.
if you think that the flood killed everybody but 8 people,
Uh-huh.
but then in the second fire judgment, not everybody died. So the whole world didn't die like they did in the first. Otherwise, I would say that if to be consistent, you'd say everybody died during the flood except the 8 people. Everybody died except the church during the fire.
Hmm.
Or you could say that the flood saved these 8 people, but not everybody in the world died. And the fire condemned those who were against Christ, but not everybody in the world died.
I mean, I do know that there is a big textual variant between Methuselah with the flood. Have you ever looked at that? That
Yes.
in the Septuagint, he's still alive for like another 14 years or 7 years or something like that after the flood.
Right. I think Nathan H83 said it, pointed that out too.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I just definitely see where it does
I
talk
mean,
about
if it's
the
global,
destruction of the fire. It has to do with the law and the Torah because it talks about the elements. That's just my biggest thing.
Right.
And that was burned and destroyed.
Right. But it wasn't a spherical earth type whole thing.
No.
But you're saying that the flood was a spherical earth whole thing.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying, that if you say that the flood was a spherical earth whole thing and the fire was a spherical earth whole thing, would be more consistent. Or if you said that the flood was local and the fire was local,
I mean,
that
I
would
don't
be,
necessarily see the problem in my camp. I see that you can make it a problem, but I just don't see it that way.
I think most
'Cause-
people see it as a problem, a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a problem. They might. I mean, it could be
But then
talking about two different
what they
things.
would do if you say that the fire was
Yeah,
local,
no, I see the problem
they would
in
say, well, look,
the
that
situation
was
you're
a
bringing
local
up.
fire. But see, Peter specifically talked about the worldwide flood.
In
Therefore, there has
comparison,
to
yeah, I
be
got
a
you.
worldwide fire. So that fire that happened in 70 AD was not the end. See, that's that because they would
Yeah,
see that Peter would be more consistent. If
yeah.
he talked about a worldwide flood, then he obviously, when he was comparing it, he was comparing it to a worldwide fire.
So, Stacy, are you trying to just logically prove that the flood was not worldwide? Is that your point?
I tend to lean more towards the fact I believe that the flood was local,
Mhm.
but I'm using Second Peter as, when he's referring to one versus the other. If you are to be, I'm just looking at consistency. So if you believe in the worldwide flood and you believe in a worldwide fire, I would say, okay, well, you're being consistent.
Right. Wait a minute. Where is that? I want to turn to that verse. Where is that exactly?
It's 2 Peter chapter 3, starting in like verse like 5.
Because this is what I use as an argument against full preterism.
Uh-huh.
I mean, but I mean,
That's my argument.
I see the problem, but again, like when he brings up the elements shall be separate, shall melt away or should be separated as they burn. My Bible says. I mean,
Right, but
it
for
has
him
to
to
do with
compare,
Torah.
I
So
know, absolutely. But for him to compare a worldwide flood
yeah,
There might be
to a
another way
could
of
local
just
looking at
be,
fire
it.
would be inconsistent for
but it
Peter.
could just be
There
on
might be a
Peter's part.
consistent way of looking at it. Is
Let's hear
that
yours.
let's say, okay, you got the worldwide flood, right? All those people are going against God because they were not doing what He created them to be. But then in Jerusalem, only those in Jerusalem were going against God, not the whole world. So He only destroyed those that were going against Him.
But you don't have a true comparison there. See, what makes a true comparison is when you take two things that are the same
They are the same. It was the people against him.
But
That's
what
the
Yeah, I
same
don't
happened?
think
part.
it was the Earth though. That's the problem. Is like when you look at it in the
Yeah, it's
future
not the Earth.
sense.
It's the people.
Yeah, because the world wasn't destroyed with water. It was the people. That's what God. That's why God sent the flood, not to destroy the world, but to destroy the people. Why? Because the people were thinking evil continually. It wasn't that the plants and the mountains and were doing anything wrong. It
Yeah,
was the people.
but let's say that the Earth is going to be destroyed by fire. Let's be consistent, like Stacy's saying.
Yeah, but I don't see the consistency when you talk about people. Though. That's my
It's
problem.
Well,
one thing to be
well,
consistent. It's another thing to be
hold
right,
on.
though, maybe.
Hold on, and finish.
Okay.
If the world, like Zach just said, that where's the comparison? Because one's people, one's world, but not really, because they're both people in the world. Because of what I believe as a partial preterist is that the Earth will be burned up, but then it will be renewed. The Earth is still there. In both cases, the Earth doesn't disappear.
Well, it's a new. Well, the problem is it's not restored. It's a new earth. The Bible says that the old earth had vanished away, and a new heaven and a new earth. God created a new thing, so it's not like a restored.
Right, but when
It's
God
a
says,
new
"I will
earth.
place a new heart within you,"
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the same heart, right? It's just a restored, really, right? That's what new
No, I
means.
think it's a
In
new. I
essence?
think it's new. I think the context determines, especially in the Old Testament, the word for new and renewed is literally the same word as chodesh, but it just determines upon the context of how the word is used. Just like in Jeremiah chapter 31:31 talks about the new covenant, not like the one that He made. So this new earth is going to be a new one because the first earth vanished away. So to be consistent, we would have to say that it's something new. But the thing is that's the problem is when people read this, they have the presupposition that okay, all these other places in the Old Testament talk about a new earth. You look at Revelation chapter 21, a new heaven and a new earth. So you just automatically then you come to here and you go, oh look, this is where the earth and heaven heaven and earth are destroyed, but this time it's by fire. But when you look at the verse itself, and it throws in the middle of this word elements, stoikine or whatever, however you pronounce the word, Strong's number 4747. It kind of ties everything with Torah, and it brings you back to Deuteronomy, Daniel chapter 12. At the same time of the resurrection and all these things that the
So why?
law, all these
All right.
things.
So let me get into your mind a little bit. Why would Peter compare that to a worldwide flood?
Because there was a destruction on just the people. That just like the people of the old is going to be destroyed, the same as God's going to do with the Jews of the old covenant. That judgment is going to be completely destroyed upon them.
But just to
Yeah, but you don't have to say like it's not like the exact like you don't have to like it's not a 100% comparison because even in it it's not it's one's water one's fire so it's not
right,
a
but
perfect comparison.
why would he even use a worldwide event when he has several instances of the nation being destroyed before?
But it wasn't I don't think it was is because Judah wasn't destroyed ever before. So this is the completion of the old covenant. The only other time that you have the northern house of Israel that was divorced, Jeremiah chapter 3, God keeps Judah because of covenant that he made with David to bring in the Messiah. Now God gives them 40 more years, and this is why the Bible says that this is the tribulation period. This period is the worst thing that the world will ever see because this is God's people that were going to be completely divorced and completely destroyed, no longer to be anything. They're going to be completely destroyed. God was ripping the kingdom completely from them, and then like their whole world, their heaven and earth, the whole temple institute, that whole heaven and earth element
Well,
of the
let's.
Torah was
What about
destroyed.
what about when it says that he's long suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish. Is that any Israel or the world?
I mean, that one could be both.
That's a good question.
Because if it's the world, then Stacy's right.
What about we might be overlooking something? It's also the heavens that are burned. Would God burn where he lives? Or is heaven and earth talking about the Jewish nation?
If it was the temple, I would say the temple represents heaven and earth. But as a full preterist, I would look at both of them as being spiritual in nature and compared the destruction of that, destroying the people who know God with water and destroying the people who think they know God by fire.
Right.
Because the Jewish nation is referred to heaven and earth a few
Mhm.
times throughout scriptures.
Right.
Yeah, that's just how I see it.
You,
I
but
don't think it disproves my position. I mean, again, I understand, like especially from
It
Matthew's
doesn't
side.
it doesn't disprove your position, but it does make it sound inconsistent.
I mean, I don't see that way, but like I said, I see inconsistency on the way you're presenting it as well.
Because it says ungodly people will be destroyed, not the earth, also. If you look at verse 3:7, let's see what the King James, how it words it.
Yeah, on destruction of wicked men. That's actually another really good verse right there to prove more of it being people.
Zach, when it says for God so loved the world, it's not
Yeah,
talking about the dirt.
it's Jew and Gentile, the
But
people.
my point is the world there is referring to people,
Yeah,
even though it's the word cosmos.
yeah, but the judgment was coming upon. I mean, like I said, it did happen to the world.
I mean,
Acts
also,
chapter
if you look at the
17.
fire in the prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah, it clearly shows that not everyone is burned.
But like I said, I think that the main destruction thing that was going to happen with the consummation of it, because even there is historical fact that there were lots of things that were happening to the Roman Empire at this time. But I
Well, even if
think
you
the
look at it even
biggest,
further, if you look at the foreshadow or shadow types of Noah's flood, and that they went into an ark,
Mhm.
and that ark was surrounded by chaotic waters and destruction. That water, I mean, that ark was a type shadow of Christ.
Yeah, the ark
So,
was Christ. Yeah,
so if you look at being in Christ during the time of the fire that Peter is talking about, that is your ark of redemption. That is your safety being in Christ now. And so for Peter to put it that way would be very highly consistent.
yeah. I mean, even like historically, I think Josephus says not one Christian was killed because they had fled the city beforehand, because they listened to Christ. Matthew chapter 23 says that when they see these things, flee to the mountains.
Did Josephus believe in a worldwide flood?
I mean, I have no idea. I
I
just
mean,
see,
look at
with the
2
worldwide
Peter.
flood. Uh,
Look at 2 Peter 3:14 too. Who was he talking to? Wherefore, beloved, he's not talking to us. He's talking to them. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things. So he's talking to them to look for things. Be diligent that ye may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless. So, Matthew, how do you get that to be in the future?
Stacy, aren't there fossils all over the world, everywhere?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the only way you can get a fossil is if a animal is buried deeply and quickly and doesn't rot or get eaten by another animal.
Well, the thing is that mountains are pushed up.
Right?
I
So,
found a fossil of a sea turtle in Nebraska.
Yeah, no, the theory is that the mountains, like the Earth, was a lot lower at one point.
well, not necessarily lower, but the tectonic plates like push towards one another. Where's that mass going to go? It's either going to go up or down.
Right. So maybe the earth was more smooth, had no mountains, no valleys, and all of the water was subterranean. And then with the cracks, which is what we have fault lines everywhere. With the breaking forth at the flood of the waters from the deep coming up, and then water added to it with the rain.
Well, wasn't the Earth covered with sea creatures in the very beginning over the whole Earth? So you could have fossils everywhere without a global flood still.
No, because the fossils have to get buried in dirt, and
Yeah, but the water receded. Remember creation?
you really have to have a lot of swishing around, because if water just recedes, then what you have is a lot of dead animals laying on top of the ground, and they'll just decay. They'll never fossilize.
Well, a lot of times
I
when
mean,
you
they
have,
receded in a day. That's pretty powerful.
you do have mud. I mean, water and dirt mix and make mud.
And I mean, receding in a day is some major water movement.
So, Matthew, you're saying then that there were no mountains before the flood?
It could. I'm just saying that's one theory, I suppose, where if it hadn't rained yet, and the waters were, of the deep, and they were from below. I mean, it does say that they came up from the deep. So it could stand to reason that the earth was more smooth, that it was completely covered with greenery. I mean, this is where we get the coal from. All the coal comes from the fossilized greens, and there's coal everywhere buried. And then you have you have the fault lines everywhere in the earth, which seem to be the cracks where the water came up.
I mean, the coal thing, that's pretty good because the whole Earth wouldn't be in the creation story. The coal thing doesn't work out then.
The one thing that I don't believe is that oil comes from fossils.
You believe coal, but not oil? I don't get it.
Yeah, I believe coal is, because coal, it really is fossilized, you know, greens. But do you guys really believe that animals turn into oil?
Well,
Dinosaurs?
definitely whales turn into oil for burning candles and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but the crude oil that
I mean, maybe, but maybe it just doesn't take that long because they would say that, those animals are there for millions of years or whatever. But
right?
in my understanding, like the flood happened like 4,000 years ago, so it was a
Yeah.
lot, you know. The same thing they say, like the Grand Canyon took millions of years, but if you have a quadrillion, billion, trillion gallons of water getting rushed through there, then it would actually, happen
Right.
very quickly.
Well, Kent Hovind talks about the polystrata fossils, like the trees that are standing upright,
Hmm.
buried in layers that the scientists think took millions of years to happen.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't believe that. I believe that in a theory called catastrophism,
Mhm.
where in local areas, uh, quick events take place, and that's what we see today.
Yeah, they somewhat changed their mind on that with the Mount St. Helens blow up.
What
Right.
do they say about that?
Just the way the layers formed right away from one day.
Yeah. I mean, I've even seen, like, people have taken, like, mud and dirt in a bottle of water and shaking that up and just letting it sit there. And, like, the different minerals settle at different layers. And it happens right there, like, pretty much in front of your eyes.
Right.
So when you have all this water getting rushed around, and then as it sets, it forms these layers. And then they even talked about, I mean, that's just like time wise. I remember there was a debate with, the famous Bill Nye the Science Guy. He talks about the ice layers. He says every winter, one ice layer ring gets formed, and if you dig down in like Antarctica or whatever, that there's like so many of these like ice layers, which shows you how many winters there were, and there's just like so many of them. And I think he's debating what's his name. He's debating the guy that of the Genesis Museum.
Right. And the Genesis Museum is like, guy's like, well, there's a plane crash that shows that's not true.
Yeah, there's like different reasons of why, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's just pretty much we're both looking at the same exact like proof of something, but then looking at it through a different lens. Like you
Right.
look at it as a billion
Interpreting the
years.
same data.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as something that happened very quickly. But again, it's because they come from the background that, well, God's not real. The Bible is a drunken pirate story, so it's false. I'm smarter, and so I use cool science, and then you have these, have the Christians that say, well, why start with the Bible, and the Bible is the Word of God, and it's true. So, yeah, it happened by a flood.
Yeah,
Happened this long ago.
we start with the Big Bang, 14.5 billion years ago. The Earth is just a fragment of the Big Bang being hurled through space. It's a ball.
Yeah, but the thing is that they actually get this idea of a beginning from religion, and they don't understand that that's where they've inherited the concept of a beginning. Because before that, you had the steady state theory that the world was always here, the universe was always here. There was no beginning to it. It was always.
Yeah, I think that's when they launched the Hubble Space Telescope and saw the red shift, which means everything's like moving away from everything. So if you just like rewind the movie back in a sense, it's everything came from one point, which shows that there was a beginning point.
Right, but then this guy named Arp was an astrologer, and he was talking about the idea of the redshift, that it could be plasma that's in between you and the object that you're looking at will also cause a redshift.
Mm.
And he did some very good data, but then it went against the Big Bang theory and that the expansion of the universe, and so they basically shut him down and wouldn't allow him to even debate.
Right.
Well, I mean, nowadays, what I've heard is like with the string theory, that pretty much just blows up the Big Bang theory, anyways, because string theory is infinite universes. Ours just, is perfect, but there's an infinite amount of universes, and I mean, there could be universes that are a lot older than ours, younger than ours. If it's an infinite amount, that means it's an infinite. It's a universe. It's just
That stops being physics and starts being metaphysics.
Yeah, that's pure speculation.
no, of course, there's no way. I mean, all this science stuff. Once you start talking about what stars do, and it's like, okay, well, I can go get some water and bring it up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit and see it boiling. I can test these things, but when you start talking about like science stuff, like, I mean, space stuff, that's where you're like, well, I mean, you physically can't get there. You can't go to the sun and take data and do that. It's just all looking through a telescope and just having assumptions.
Yeah, that's right. You haven't measured it with a ruler.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they're making better assumptions than I might have. They studied these things a lot more than me, I'm going to say, but at the same time, you can't say that, when you look through a telescope, that's just like me taking some chemicals and mixing it together in front of my face and getting the answer. You know, you, you know, you can't
But
really do that
Zach,
science stuff.
what exactly did they study? That's, I mean, they're telling us that the stars are billions of years away, light years away.
Yeah.
And the light that we're seeing is billions of light years old. I mean, what are they studying?
Yeah.
They're really just thinking about theories and putting them forth.
They're studying paintings.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like when it comes to that stuff, it's just they're just making stuff up.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's like that's the biggest thing. It's like you can test things. Like I agree, science is legit when it comes to physically testing stuff out. Like literally going and grabbing these materials and adding this and doing that, and boom, you got something. But when you just look at something through a telescope, then come on.
It's so comical when you watch one of those documentaries, not a documentary, but one of those shows that portrays the universe and everything is graphics. And
Hmm.
when you listen to their language, it's so sneaky. Everything in there is could be, maybe, we think, like the whole thing
Yeah.
is like
Possibly, maybe, perhaps, sometime. Yeah, exactly.
I would like to see the test they can do in a library. I mean, in a laboratory that says that light will continue on forever and ever.
Yeah, they can't really do that experiment, can they? Because they don't have a laboratory that can go on, right, forever and ever.
There's also another thing to prove the speed of light. Um, if I remember correctly, like they weren't really able to determine or something like that.
Yeah, it was a consensus that they reached, and they said it was 3.0 times 10 to the eighth meters per second.
Yeah, I know it's
But every time,
186,000 miles a second.
yeah, 286,000 miles, but
186
per second.
per second.
Um, but
186,000.
yeah, but the thing is that every time they tested it, it was different. And so
yeah.
they said, we're not going to test it anymore. We're going to just say it's this. That's the same thing they do with weights.
Stacy, do you know how they test the speed of light?
I know they like shined it through a mirror and bounced it back, and then they timed like how long it took to come back or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Or they just shot it once and they had a super sensitive sensor at the end and they could measure it. But every time they measured it, it was different. Now, why would that be? They say, oh, well, it's because our instruments are, faultier or they're not perfect.
Yeah, I would agree. That's because your instruments are.
I mean, there's one video that I remember watching years ago where they have this guy, he videotapes them shooting a laser light through a bottle of like a Coca-Cola, but I guess like a clear or maybe like full of water. And pretty much what he has a camera that what they're saying is that it's recording that image and it's slowing it down so where you can actually see the light move. And it's kind of like a slow motion camera, but for the speed of light. But I actually remember him saying that this is like a
That would be
computer
CGI.
generate. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
that's
think it
CGI.
is.
But like, you can only do so much for the current circumstances, right? Like, Noah had it a little bit different before the flood. Okay, the environment, I think, was a little bit different, just slightly. But that allowed him to live to be ridiculous amounts of life even after the flood. But look at it. But that's because everything worked differently. So like when you date something now post flood, it's like, oh, this was like 9,000. How did you get that? Like, your dates are off because you're assuming things. You really got to watch out for your assumptions. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know. But Matthew, what do you say? What do you think a lunar eclipse is?
A lunar eclipse?
Mm-hmm.
Oh
What
man,
causes the shadow on the moon?
I have no idea. I thought about it too.
Do you think that is? I mean, for me, that's pretty. That's the top. Uh, I guess thing that I could say for a globe Earth or whatever. That's the biggest. Like, not the biggest, but that's like the hardest thing that a flat earther can explain.
Really? Is that's not the hardest? Come on,
Yeah,
dog.
for
Like
sure.
I got that in like
Not
5 seconds. Like really?
but not sounding like, dude, man, like, there's like this
Seriously, I
invisible
can
thing
prove that in 5 seconds.
floating in the air. All right,
You
prove
want
it.
to hear it?
Yep.
So you're telling me that that's the projection of the Earth onto the moon. That's why that's happening.
I mean, I'm asking you, what do you think it is?
Did you know where all the other celestial bodies were at the time? How is that even possible according to your thing?
Well, go a bit further and describe and explain the phases of the moon.
I don't
I mean,
have
well, the
to.
phases of the moon is different than a lunar eclipse.
Exactly. But what
The,
causes it?
I mean,
Exactly.
in my
Okay.
mind, the lunar eclipse. I mean, the shadow of the moon. I've saw some pretty cool videos where the moon is like every day it's like 12 point something degrees. Like if you can look at the sun and moon together every day, the moon would be 12.2 or 12 point something degrees behind the sun every 24 hours. So this is why the moon is like going in a different pattern than the sun.
But then you're telling me that eventually it will catch up and then one will
Yeah, every
eclipse.
every like 28 days it like reaches back to each
So
other, like
get to the
resets.
eclipse.
But no. But the thing is with the eclipse, I mean, so the thing with the sun, because that's another thing people don't understand what's the shadow on the moon. People think that's the Earth. No, it's not. The crescent moon has nothing to do with the Earth. It has to
Wow,
do
you're on
with the
my side.
moon. But when you talk about a lunar eclipse, now there is something going in front of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to flat earthers, we have to say there is an invisible orb, an invisible something in like the North Pole.
What? No. No.
Or
I
you
mean,
just have to say the lunar eclipse just happens just because that's just part of nature.
I filmed both with a thermal camera. So like I don't know what's going on, but you tell me. So when I filmed the lunar eclipse, I actually saw the actual shape of the moon crescent, like turning into a oh, you're gonna laser me? Is that a flag? Are you flagging me? But no, I saw it actually turn into a crescent. But when I saw the solar eclipse, absolutely nothing at all got in front of the sun. So you tell me what happened.
Wait, say that again?
So when I saw the lunar eclipse last
Uh-huh.
year,
Okay.
I filmed it with my thermal camera, and what happened was as it was being, eclipsed, I saw the crescent in the thermal camera. I could actually see that something was happening and it was getting crescented,
Yeah, of
right?
course. It
But
goes.
then when I watched the fucking sorry, oh shit. when I watched the my bad for saying that. But when I watched the other one, when I watched the solar eclipse, what happened was I didn't see anything at all get in front of the moon, like or the sun. Like nothing happened. Like nothing got in front of anything. There was nothing. There was nothing there.
So then, what's the black that goes in front of the sun?
Well, exactly. That's what I was asking too. I was like, "Wait, what? I was not expecting this." Like when I was filming it with the camera, I was myself like, "What? Like why not?" Like I was expecting something to get in the way, but it
I
didn't.
mean,
Right. You don't see anything. It just starts to.
It just did it
Yeah, it
exactly.
starts to get. I mean, the thing is, like, it's too hard to really look at it.
It
But
just,
when you look at a
I'm just,
lunar
that's what
eclipse, that's the
happened. Like, I'm
difference.
just telling you, like, nothing got in the way. Okay. So, like, it got dark. I was on the ground. I saw it.
Yeah,
I
nothing
was with
got
the
in the
police.
way of the
I was
sun.
with police officers and I was watching it, and they were definitely all like, we were all seeing that, like, something got in the way and the whole land got dark.
Yeah, but it
But
takes
when I
time.
looked
It's
through
not
it
like
with the
instantly.
thermal, nothing was there.
Well,
Nothing.
what?
There was nothing in front of the sun.
Yeah, but the
Absolutely.
thing is you are looking at the sun. You weren't in the totality
I was
area.
using a thermal camera.
Like you had to have been in the totality era.
It
Like
was.
not
Okay. So you're
you.
saying I was in Pennsylvania. I should have been in, like, where the
Yeah,
total.
if you were like Georgia, North Carolina, like that
Okay.
area, then you would be like where I
But
was. It was an 80%.
but how does that change what I'm saying?
You're looking at it at a different angle. Because if you did look
But
at it, of course something goes in front of the sun. It's the moon. It's not something going in between it. I mean, even flat
how do
earthers
you
say
know
it.
it's the moon? Because I'm telling you, dude, I watched the moon up
No,
until then.
it's because that's where the moon is. The moon
That's not
is
where yeah,
yeah,
that's
no,
right.
the
I
moon is
agree.
there. That's where the moon is. So what
I
other
agree.
big orb thing
But I'm
uh
telling you, I can see the moon with my thermal camera, and it wasn't there.
yeah, you can't see the moon. There's no light
Oh,
coming off
you
the
can.
moon.
You,
Not on a new moon. You can't see the moon with a
well,
thermal
yeah, you're
camera.
right. On a new moon, I
That
haven't
you, of
been able
course
to
you
do it.
can't. That's where the sun is. When you look at a new
So
moon,
let me ask you a question then.
moon is right where the sun is. But now during a
Where
solar eclipse, it
during
just
a
so happens to line up with each other in the angle that
during
you're looking at
during
it.
a new moon, where is the moon?
The moon is where the sun is.
So you're saying that the moon is behind the sun during a
No,
new
no, the moon is in front of the sun.
in front of the sun, so it's blocking it. So we should have an eclipse every time.
No, it's in a different, not a perfect. Because again, when you look up, there's only one spot
Oh,
where
so
the
you're saying
sun
it's
is.
slightly off. Okay,
Yeah, it's slightly off. That's why there's partial eclipses. It just so
okay.
happens through the cycle that it
Fair
connects.
enough.
But that is explainable on both scenarios, flat Earth and heliocentric.
Yeah,
The
totally.
problem is to explain a lunar eclipse on a flat Earth. That what goes in front of the moon?
It's what Rahu. I'm just kidding.
That's what I'm saying. You have it's just as a flat earther, you have to be like if somebody asks you that, you have to kind of sound it sounds very bizarre like
No, yeah, it sounds very bizarre, but, like,
yeah,
really,
that's what
what
I'm
is
saying.
going?
Like that's the only explanation is you have to be like you have to like think about it. Like you have to like take a hit off
Then,
the joint and be like,
mhm.
dude, man, it's the invisible planet, bro.
But then
You can't see it, dude. You just
you could
can't see.
also you could also pull one like me and think, like, what if this is a trick question, and you're just trying to get me to ask the question, who is this? It's like, no, well, how does it do that? I don't know. Like, I don't have to give you an explanation.
Yeah, but that's like, I
What do you
mean,
think
but
about that?
yeah, I mean, then to that person, it would seem like you lost.
Well, it might seem like that, but, like, technically I win.
No, you chicken out of giving a good
I mean,
answer.
you haven't actually told me, like, why this would happen in the first place. So, like,
Well, I mean, according to the heliocentric model, it makes perfect sense.
okay, explain.
Okay, you have to, you know, the Earth is in between on a full moon. The moon is in the complete opposite of the sun, on, in standard to the Earth. So if you like think of your face, like your head is the Earth, right directly in front of you is the sun, and directly behind your head where you can't see is the moon on a full moon. This happens every single
Okay,
month,
I I
right?
got it all in my head. Okay,
Now it just so happens that it lines up perfectly to go in between because again in front of in front of your face is the sun, Like, especially if
Right.
you're looking at a computer screen, there
Yeah.
just so happens to be a perfect shade behind your head, and the moon goes in between that shadow
Just
in the
so
perfect
perfect.
position. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
why it doesn't happen all the time. It's just like a,
Right.
you know.
Okay.
So, but that's an explanation. I'm not saying that that's true, but that's an actual like
Yeah.
explanation for why it happens. But on the flat Earth, you have to say that there's some invisible orb in the center of the world, and it, you know,
I don't have to say any such thing. All I like
you
what?
just said
That's
Roku. What was that? What did you
that
call? What did you call it?
that is where you get minus 50
No,
DKP.
but what was that planet, or what was that? Not planet. You said a name that starts with the letter R.
R.
Roku, Ruba. What was it?
Roku. Yeah.
What is that?
No, I was just.
Well, what
I
is
was,
that?
no, Rahu.
Yeah,
That's
what's
the
Rahu?
evil. That's the evil sun god. Like Rahu, and like there's the suns. The different like there's certain
uh,
civilizations that believe Rahu, and like these are like stars. They come around like when you see them, like you're all gonna die. Like watch out for it.
but that's not. I mean, because I've heard Rob Skiba talk about something that sounds just like with that, and it's like the dark moon or something like that. That
Yes, Rahu. Yeah, because well, listen. First
yeah,
off, if you
that's the
listen to
stuff I'm
Rob
talking
Skiba, you get
about.
minus 50 DKP right off the bat.
Oh, well, just minus me a trillion DKP because I don't want
Okay,
any
fine. I
DKP.
will note it. You asked for it.
Thank you.
No, you got to be able to keep doing your point. Come on.
No, so that's pretty much where I learned what a a lunar eclipse is,
But like,
and I
why do
mean
you believe that? Who told you that? Like,
Rob
you
Skiba.
you are all just you really are just believing nonsense that people told you.
Well, I mean you just said the same thing, Rahu. That was
Exactly. I
your
don't believe.
answer
You
to.
think I believe in Rahu? I just told you about
Uh,
Rahu. That doesn't mean I believe in him.
no, so okay, so then explain to me.
Like
That's what I said. You
what?
can't in a flat Earth. You can't like at least like what Matthew said that he just doesn't know.
What? No. And so your ultimate question was
That's
like,
all I asked.
why the crescent? No,
No,
that's what you asked
no,
him, right?
no.
You said
I
why?
said for a flat earther, the hardest thing to answer is what is a lunar eclipse. I believe that a flat earther cannot answer that question.
Okay. All right. Any other flat earthers care to take that?
No, but I'll give you my theory on the phases and how they happen.
Yeah,
Please,
that's not well, that's easy in a flat earth model in my
whatever.
opinion.
Let it.
I
Can we
don't
just?
know. I don't know if it's easy because the phases are extremely consistent.
Yeah, no.
They look the same every time.
Yep.
Yeah, they are. I have to agree with Matthew. That's
And
why I think you should let them do it.
so I have a theory. I don't know if anybody has ever come up with this theory,
Do it.
except me, but I did a little test. If you take a ball and you paint half the ball white and half the ball black, and then you turn it you put it at a certain angle and you turn it, you're going to see exact phases, just like the moon. Perfect crescent, perfect half, and so on. Until you turn it to the black side and you see nothing. So my theory is that half of the moon, and God set the phases up to begin with. That's where you get the feasts from of Israel, and the moon still acts the same way. But I think half the moon it actually glows, and it picks up light from the sun. Whenever the sun is facing the light side of the moon is picking up the light, almost like a glow in the dark toy.
Fair enough.
Then it doesn't matter the positioning of the sun and the moon. You're going to get the phases no matter what, because the moon is half the moon is glowing and the moon is turning consistently. It's the only thing that I can think of.
Yeah, I'll show you mine.
But
This is on a flat earth.
but here's one last comment that I'll make.
Mhm.
I think everything that we see is almost unexplainable physically. I think God is just making it look that way. It's basically an everyday miracle, especially with the phases.
I think you can figure it out. You just need a little help from your friends.
Here. Now I have this one. I don't know if you could see my. Okay, I just drew this out. This is
Okay.
scientific here, Harvard style.
All right. I like
Okay,
your scientific diagram.
the big
It's very
circle
good.
is the Earth,
Okay.
flat Earth, right? Here's the sun. Here's the moon. Think of it like a clock, right?
Okay.
I could be wrong. It could go this way, but just
Okay. Okay.
regardless,
Okay. Okay.
if you take the moon cycle, it goes through a cycle every about like 20 and a half days, or 28 and a half, 28.8, or 20, anywhere from 28 to 29 days, right? What is the diameter? Isn't it 360 degrees for a circle, or
Well, that's what you said. Yeah.
right, Matthew?
That's the degrees of a circle. Yeah.
Okay, right. So now take 360, divide that by 28, or 28 and a half. What do you get?
I don't know. I don't have a
Like
calculator.
12.6 something.
I assume you know the answer.
That's right. 12.63.
So now in
Oh,
my
you're
theory,
good.
so let's just say this is new moon day, right? This is the point of where the moon goes back through its cycle. So now if you're standing right here, you don't see the moon because the sun is shining on the moon in the angle where you can't look at it, right? It's called new moon. If the moon was over here, then it would be a full moon. So every day at the same time period, the moon would every day when the sun goes around gets back here, the moon's going to be 12 degrees over here, and it just keeps going. It tarries behind the sun 12.6 degrees every day for 28 and a half days, and then when you get to 28 and a half days, boom, it goes right back. So again, like if you were to take a ball,
Yeah.
that's what they do,
That's
and
your
you
only
go.
problem.
It doesn't matter, but the thing is, I mean, well,
It 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 does matter.
this is
Because
how it
like, look,
works with
you're
both,
showing
though.
me something on a 2-dimensional, but keep going.
Yeah, so that's how you would get the phases of the moon. The same way that heliocentric people say the moon get its light from is the same way it gets here, but it works on a flat Earth model as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So it
totally.
just tracks back, and then it's a cycle. It repeats itself over and over and over again. This is
Yeah,
why the phases are perfect every single time,
because
because
they're
it's
both
just a
wrong.
cycle that God had
Hmm.
created if
Hmm.
the Earth is flat, and
Well,
that's how that works. But again, like I said, when you talk about a flat Earth now you get into this right here is a solar eclipse. The moon blocks the sun. Now the moon's over here on a flat Earth, because this would be where you have a full moon. So when you live over here in Florida or in New York, whatever, and you look up, it's a full moon because the sun has already gone past the vantage point and it's over on the other side of the world. All of a sudden, now this full moon starts to get a little dark here. Gets a little darker, darker, dark, and then all of a sudden it gets darker and then turns red and then goes back all the way to dark over here and then goes back as a beautiful full moon a couple hours later. The question is, what causes that? And on a flat earth, there is no answer.
yes, there is.
I haven't heard it
There's
yet.
totally an answer, and the Bible gave it to you. Like, did you not figure it out?
Oh, I forgot. Acts chapter 29.
Because you're telling me, according to I know, like, you're gonna totally hate me for saying this, but
Tell me, bro.
so you're saying that it has to be the Earth getting in the way, right? That the Earth is the
That's an
one that's creating
explanation,
the
though.
shadow. That's why it's a crescent, right?
Wait,
But
say it
what
again?
if actually what it
No, forget
says?
the crescent. Forget that it's a crescent. I don't care what shape the shadow on
Okay,
the moon is
okay,
on a lunar
well,
eclipse. There's a shadow on the moon.
okay.
That's where
Well,
the problem comes in. There has to
let's
be
imagine
something there.
there's a shadow on the moon. Okay.
Yeah, on a lunar eclipse. You never watched a lunar eclipse?
Yeah, I've watched it.
Yeah, what is
Maybe in the
going in
top.
front of the what's going in front of the moon?
Nothing.
So then it just so that's what I'm saying. It just so
You're imagining stuff. Like nothing. No. The reason that it's crescented is because that's what it does.
now you're talking about you're talking about a lunar eclipse.
I'm talking about everything that the moon does. It does that because that's what the moon does. So like,
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
crescents and all. Like it's self-illuminating.
Well, here's the one thing that
Maybe.
here's the one thing that would line up with what you're saying, Albert. Just like the phases of the moon, when you do see a lunar eclipse, it looks like it looks like the phases of the moon are happening, but very
Yeah,
quick.
on a full moon. Yeah.
But now here's the thing: if you look at the shape of the phases, they're always the same, and they're according to the size of the moon. They're not according to a shadow being cast on the moon. They're exactly. That's why if you do
Thank
that
you.
if you do that little test that I did with the ball, you make half dark and half light, and you turn it, you'll see the phases. But here's the other interesting thing: when you look at a crescent moon or any kind of a partial moon, you can literally see the outline of the part that you can't see.
I know, but I mean, do you think that heliocentric people believe that the phases of the moon is caused by the Earth?
No,
I think that
Okay.
that's what
don't.
they think. Yeah,
No, they
that's
don't.
exactly what.
That's
No,
not
see,
what
that
they
was
think
a
at
trick
all.
question, Matthew. He said, "Do you think that that's what those people think?" And the answer is yes.
The answer is no.
No, that's what those people do think.
No, I
They
was.
think that the Earth is the reason that the crescent happens,
No,
but it's
I'll
not.
show. Okay, I'll show you literally right now. This is literally.
Good.
This is literally what
But
they
hold
believe.
on, they can't think that because you
This
can
is
look. You can look up in the sky at a crescent moon, and then you can look across in the other direction and see the
right
sun.
here. Right here. Look, this is my face. The camera is the Earth. Right. This right here is what you would call
Terrible
a
model.
new moon. Right. So the face of this is dark.
You
Right.
suck at doing this model.
But now, if you look at the ball, it starts to get brighter and brighter.
Oh, you should be
This
Rob. You should get the Rob
this
nomination.
is literally what is taught in schools.
Wow. But look,
That
I
this is
noticed how
this is
the bottom part of your seasons is all effed up. Like like you can't just be showing me
that's it
some
right there.
simpleton
So
animation and not
it's not
expect me to partake
it's
in the
not the
dissection.
no, but that's what I'm saying. That's what people think, that that it's the moon it's the Earth's curvature that makes the crescent moon and the half moon,
Right.
but that's not what's happening. It's
Okay.
the place the sun, the moon doesn't turn. The moon stays in one position and just goes around the Earth in that motion, just the way I just showed you, in a 1 month period, right? But then, like I said, it tracks 12.6 degrees. This is why if you were to look at where the sun is every single day at the same exact time, the moon would be in the sky 12.6 degrees behind it every single day.
I would hope
And
your
then,
calculations are correct.
well, I mean, that's what the math does. 360 degrees, divide that by
Okay,
20.
so forgive me. I would hope that your math is correct.
So, but the thing is the problem is on a. So when we talk about the phases of the moon and things like that, it has nothing to do with the Earth.
Nothing to
So
do.
that's why when nothing to do with it.
That I don't think that can work because the moon is consistent in its rotation, but the
Yeah,
sun
exactly. No. They're
the sun
just
speeds up and slows down, and it changes angle.
well. If you were to look at the sun every day at 12 o'clock, it's pretty much going to be in the same spot,
Yeah,
like
but
wherever
he
you
is
look at
right.
it.
It does change angle. He's right. You have to account for that.
The
You
No,
can't.
angle, it
it's not.
angle, it's going to be a little north or a little south of you, depending
No,
upon
no,
which
like I
day
don't think
of the.
you quite fully grasp. Like the
Trust
angle
me,
is very important,
it's going
especially
to
if it's
be in the same spot every day.
No, in
here.
the
Don't
summer,
forget about the
No,
circle.
no. In the summer, it's going to be like, especially when it sets, it's going to either be more south
Whoa,
of
whoa,
you
whoa.
or more
Hang on,
north
hang
of
on,
you?
hang on. Listen, this is kind of, I believe this to be a fact.
Uh-huh.
I may be wrong, but in the summer, the sun slows down. This is why you have a longer day. So the sun slows down, and it's higher up in the sky. That's
How
why.
does the sun slow down?
Now in the
Oh,
winter,
what? Let him
How
finish.
does the sun slow down?
because
Stop. Let him finish. Let him finish first, then we can answer that.
you know the sun slows down because you have a longer day. Now in the winter, the sun speeds up. I'm sorry. In the winter, the sun it's lower in the sky, so it's taking a longer circumference.
But that doesn't. I mean, so the thing is you can like without watches or whatever, you can look at the sun and tell what time it is. You don't have to be like, okay, well, I'm in winter, but I'm closer to summer, so
Yeah,
I could
I
be
can do
off
that.
by an
You
hour.
know
The
why?
sun, if you
Because
just go out tomorrow for the next
yeah,
month
I can do that.
at 12 o'clock,
Yeah, that's
look at the sun, and it's going to be in the same place for the entire month. Do it. I literally did this for an
listen,
entire year. I did
listen,
my
listen,
lines with my
listen.
shadow and stuff like
How
that.
do you know when summer's near?
No, think about that for a moment,
How do you
Matthew.
know?
Think about that. If the summer is longer during the summer and the sun is the light source, then the sunlight should be longer in the south too. But it's actually
I'm just saying,
shorter.
in the north, when? How do you know?
Well, I'm just saying if that's Matthew's theory, then the light should be longer in the
I'm
south
just saying,
too.
like, I know because I have fig trees, right? So,
See,
like,
here's the follow the logic. Whether this is right or wrong, it is a little bit consistent. If the sun is lower in the sky in the winter, and it
Yeah,
is,
but the sun goes in a circle, right?
all right. Wait.
let him finish.
Of course, it goes
Well,
in a
he didn't answer my question before he went on to arguing the point.
Okay, well, remember it.
this. If the sun is lower and you're having a shorter day, then the sun is having a wider. It's circumnavigating in a wider fashion, but it's going faster.
What about the south?
It's the same. It's the South has also.
But the south has a shorter day, not a longer day during the summer.
Is that true? The South has a shorter day.
Absolutely. They have winter.
No. In the summer, the South has a shorter day than in the winter.
Absolutely.
I
South
thought it was,
America, it's winter time in South
Did
America
you
when
not
it's
hear the key words he said in the south?
I thought
still the
Mexico was
south
the
is
same
shorter
all the
too,
time.
no matter how far you go south.
I mean, I know Australia they have like it's the opposite seasons or something like that.
So, Rob,
I mean, your theory doesn't
That's
work,
opposite
Matthew.
season.
you're saying in the summertime. Who just got knocked off? Oh, Zach.
Zach.
So, Rob, you're saying in the summertime, when we in the North are having summer, those in the South are having winter. Is that what you're telling
Of, of course. Don't you realize, don't you know South America gets the winter and
Yeah,
they
I
have
agree.
summer?
When
My
one's
friend
getting
in
one, the other
Australia,
is getting the other.
my
I
friend in
agree.
Australia is in the late fall right now.
Yeah, we have opposites. That's why, he said like the seasons shall continue like pretty much forever and stuff. Right? Wasn't that Genesis or something? We should
Well,
use scripture,
Mexico is in
shouldn't
summer
we?
right now. How far south are you talking?
I'm talking about the whole entire earth. I'm talking about like there are certain things that are, they're determined.
No, I mean like the days. What are the days like in Mexico right
Oh,
now?
oh yeah. Well, I don't know. You
I
tell
thought
me.
they
Well,
were the same all
Mexico's
year
kind of
round.
closer to the equator.
Anything close to the equator is going to be pretty much the same and not very many seasons, really. It's just going to be one season.
So,
timeline.
so places south of the equator are going to be opposite in season than we are north of the equator.
Yes. So
Exactly.
That's what I would
the further
expect.
you get away from the equator, the more prominent the seasons will be. Australia right now is in the late fall. You can see the leaves change. It's getting cool.
So maybe we just will never figure it all out, eh?
Oh, we will figure it out. Just watch out for the change and all the deceivers. That's all.
Yeah, see, these things.
Well, as long as you adopt a round Earth, it's no problem. But if you want to have a flat, you got a major problem.
Yeah,
Well,
whatever.
But I don't understand why you say it's not a problem on a round Earth. I
mean,
have
it's a whole different thing, but I mean, it makes a lot of easy sense.
I have a problem with a round Earth. I can see a boat 18 miles away at sea level. That's a problem.
Wait, you have a problem with what? Round Earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
We can talk about the moon and the sun all day long. It's kind of a little bit subjective,
Yeah,
but
because I agree. Because like, who can actually prove? Like, have you gone to the moon, Rob? No, so you can't really talk about it, can you?
Oh, have you seen God?
No,
Then how
but
can
you
you talk
can't
about
bring
it?
that into this conversation
That's the
because
same
it
thing you're doing.
does. No. You are making a false equivalation.
Is it possible? Is it possible, not that we have it already, but is it possible to build a telescope that is strong enough to point to the moon to see the American flag?
the one that's waving in the wind that's not there.
Or would there be
Probably because
some
our atmosphere. I don't
scientific?
think we could build one that's strong enough. But
Okay. All right. So there's some scientific reason why they would say no.
you could do it from space.
But you could. That key words, but you could. Like once upon a time I could have built a giant castle which was made out of guess what? Troglodytes. But I don't have enough troglodytes to make the castle out of.
But why would the atmosphere interfere with seeing an American flag, but not interfere with other objects that the
Right.
moon's there for?
Exactly.
Doesn't any item of matter just basically reflect light?
I mean, if you could see that Tesla they put in space.
Well, I have a question. Why does Google have to drive around with a car to take pictures and then use drones? I thought we had satellites. And how can we have
I
them?
agree.
And
They
how
were satellites, and they still are satellites of the Earth.
That's
The pictures of a car for more detailed pictures.
let him finish.
The very first ones were satellites. He did answer. He
No,
ended it
but
with a
what do you
question.
mean by satellite? Balloon? Like let him finish.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering why
Why do you take a picture of a family member from 10 feet away instead of 100 feet?
Because I don't like the look of your face. That's why.
supposedly the GPS can track.
I still love you though. Don't worry.
How accurate is supposed to be GPS with your car? It's to the like 3 feet or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not sure.
It's very accurate, right?
Yeah.
Why do you lose the signal in certain places? That probably happens to be where there are no cell phone towers.
That's
Yeah.
whenever you go under a bridge.
I agree.
If
Well,
you've ever had satellite radio before.
oh right. Well, but brother, I would actually go on an adventure with you. I would actually go. So like we would go on an adventure. Like, would you trust me to guide you through wherever we were going? Or would you
Without
trust your
GPS or with
phone or
GPS?
your technology? Like, what would you trust? Would you trust me, the person who told you, like, trust me, dude, like, I've been through this area of the world before. Like, I
I
can
mean,
I can
GPS
navigate you through the
isn't
canyons. Or would you
navigation
rather be
and
like,
GPS
nope,
are two
nope.
different things.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
I mean, navigation and GPS are two different things because the navigation can definitely be wrong.
I
But
was trying to help you.
GPS, if you're
So
just
you
going by
say whatever you say.
coordinates,
I was trying to help you.
yeah, I mean, I would trust the person over navigation if I had to
Thanks.
make a choice.
Good to know. I'll pick you for first scout. But
I
no,
don't know if
seriously,
my
like, what do
direction
you?
skills are that great, but
No, I'm saying, like, what do you think, Rob? You think we should all just like, what do you think? Like, right? We have all these things that are predetermined, all these aspects of what are we picking?
I mean, only God knows all that stuff.
Oh, see, like, you really feel comfortable just throwing it up in the air like that? Just being like, oh well, let me just throw it up there. Only God knows. Like, you can't pick anything. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say Calvinism is true or anything. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Come on. You can defeat the devil. No problem.
Stacy, did you watch the Leighton Flowers debate?
There you go. There you go.
Not yet.
You did you like my comment that I made to you?
Yeah, I saw it. Oh,
What is it about Leighton that you don't like anyway?
the same thing I don't like about Don Preston. It's the
What-
same subject over and over and
Oh,
over again.
that's
Ooh.
true. That's true. But I only listen to Leighton when I feel like thinking about Calvinism. I don't have to listen to him all the time, you know?
Mhm.
Isn't it good though that he doesn't think of you when he thinks of he thinks of Leighton Flowers, not you. That's
I
good.
know. And Leighton has no opinion on dispensationalism. Nobody could even ask him about it.
Right, because he's so narrow-minded that he
That's
just think about
exactly it. He hasn't thought about it.
well, it's late, guys. So
Yeah,
you
I
guys
got
have
Oh, okay. Good night for you.
night night.
yeah, night guys. I'm out.
Oh, you're out too. Okay.
Good night.
Good
Oh,
night.
you're all out. Okay. All right. Fair enough. And now it's just me. So I guess now I'll just go ahead and tell you about all my opinions since all of you left. Not that any of you are ever going to listen to any of this. However, if you do believe in Satan, you're being retarded. And Satan being some sort of angel who's out to get you. Because there are no fallen angels whatsoever. None. Not even one. And if you think that there's any kind of Nephilim giants created by the sexual union of angels that can magically create their own peni, only way I can put it, their own peni. Like, could you imagine, right? Like, if I told you, hey girl, how am I do with you? But like, watch as I magically create my peni. Like, watch this. Pure. Then I'm just gonna get it, and then like, what out of nowhere? Like, no, this is retarded. There's no kind of angel sex. Angels do not have sex with women. If you believe that, you're being retarded. Anyway, talk to y'all cats later. Bye bye.